Once upon a time, there lived a witch who slept in a forest of thorns for 1,000 years. One day, a handsome golden-haired prince found her. But he was too young. The witch took him under her wing. However, she left him when he was 15 years old. The prince never came to her again, and the witch fell asleep again. The prince wandered through the forest for a long time to find her after receiving great strength and power. Then he made his way through the thorn vines and fought with monsters. All this to find the small castle where the witch slept. The prince, who had not seen her for 10 years, was so happy that he burned down the forest and her house. And after that, he proposed to her, and they lived happily ever after. That's the end of it. Ariel thought this story was about her. The blonde confirmed this, and after that, said that he loved her so much that he wanted to destroy her. This is Rickert Cedric von Delium, who is the Emperor of Elysium. He is also the same prince who was raised by the witch. Ariel Ashildr Louise Arundel is the witch who raised the prince. The emperor did not understand why she could not choose one thing and believed that she did not want to be destroyed so much. Ariel suggested they just say that they love each other, but she is not sure that they will be able to live happily ever after. The emperor noted that he could not guarantee that she would like the process, but that was his final goal. The witch said that the process was also important, but the emperor did not think so. The girl demanded that he answer normally, and therefore began to hit him with a pillow. The emperor jumped away from this. The girl said that he should say what he was going to do. Rickert remained silent for a moment and did not understand why she was so interested in this. He noted that you can just wait and see everything for yourself. The girl would like to know when everything went wrong. She lived in the eastern monster forest, in a cozy and precious territory. This was the case until the emperor came to wake her up and take her away. It is even strange that this child managed to become the ruler of the country. But when she entered the outside world, then the woman realized that 1,000 years had passed. Ariel had no idea where they were now. The emperor dragged her into the palace without even giving her time to adjust to the new world. Her arrival caused utter chaos. The emperor brought some village girl, so everyone started talking about it. There were rumors that she was from the eastern monster forest and lived somewhere on the outskirts of the capital. At first glance, she seems so clumsy, and she is some kind of ignoramus who does not understand the world around her. It's impossible not to overhear the conversation when they're loudly discussing her. Ariel has only been here a short time, so she still doesn't understand how this world works. Perhaps she seems stupid because of her questions. Perhaps it's all because she's illiterate. That's what the rumors were. She ended up in the yard, but she can't even read. It's completely unclear where he brought such a stupid girl from. But Ariel thought it was unfair, because she was Princess Ashildr. She is the great sorceress of the kingdom of Arundel, and now they call her illiterate. But in this world, the writing system has changed, so it is unfair, and she has no one to discuss such injustice with. Then someone pushed her. It was the servant who brought in the fragile things. They were carrying cultural treasures that had been evacuated from the monster forest. Then, when the girl heard this, she realized that these looked like things from her house. They couldn't believe it because they saw there the language of the ancient kingdom of Arundel. These were magical books, so they believed that ancient magic would be revealed to them. They needed to start researching immediately, and His Majesty didn't destroy the forest for no reason. This book looks familiar. I think it was in the hut. So the girl realized that this was her diary, which she kept when she was 15 years old. A girl who was dragged out of bed is threatening to reveal her shameful 1,000-year-old secrets to the whole world. These men drove her away because they were very busy, and she was blocking their way. But then they realized that it looked like this was the woman Her Majesty had brought. They were shocked that the guests were so uneducated. But the girl is not a stupid village girl. She is the princess of a magical kingdom, even though they fell 1,000 years ago. The problem is not even that it's her diary that is her dark past. They were simply delighted when they saw the ancient runic symbol that signifies the great sorceress Ashildr. This handwriting is definitely her writing, so this is a great discovery. They repeat the same thing. They can believe that they have found the records that she forever. But these are the dark corners of Ariel's past. This life is doomed, so it's very interesting to know whether it's possible to reincarnate or return to the past. Such were those few days in the palace. She had no idea where to begin to unravel this knot. And when it all went wrong, it seemed to have happened about 15 years ago. Ariel slept as usual. But while she was sleeping, someone came to her. She didn't understand who it was. She saw that he had light hair. This boy looked like an angel. He was surprised that she was alive. The boy presented her with a knife and remarked that he was simply wondering if she would wake up if he stabbed her with the knife. It is completely unclear what is happening and why this crazy child is doing this. Ariel told this child that if he stabbed her in the neck, no one would wake up and she would simply die. First, she needs to deal with this dagger. Rickert is the future emperor. And after her words, he was surprised that it was true. That's how it all started, when that blonde-haired child came and disturbed her sleep. The eastern forest is filled with thorn thickets and monster trees. Inside the forest, time moves much more slowly than outside, which is why it is sometimes called the Eastern Time Forest, a forest where time stands still. The boundaries of this forest are impassable. Outsiders cannot enter it. Ariel Ashildr, Princess of Arendal, and a great magician, spent many lonely years in this forest, and there was a seal on it that kept her imprisoned for over 100 years. But she almost always slept, so time flew by for her. Ariel woke up every time the forest's seal weakened, but it didn't last long, so she didn't have time to feel lonely. After waking up, she had a lot to do. Check the magic circle and the sealed portal in the forest. If this seal is broken, dimensional club monsters will emerge from the portal. Then she'll be able to study magic in peace. The awakening doesn't last very long, so she needs to make at least some progress. Someone was knocking on her door and begging her to open it, but the girl decided that she would simply ignore it. She decided that she didn't hear anything and tried to convince herself of this. But her door was broken down, and the girl was shocked by this. The blonde was delighted when the door opened. Ariel didn't understand his reaction and told him to stop laughing. She had no idea what was wrong with this stupid child. Her peaceful life in the forest was shattered when that yellow-haired man came and held a knife to her throat. She had so many interesting things that he was completely captivated. He picked up one of the plates, and it fell from him. He said it slipped out on its own. Ariel was furious because this wasn't his playroom, so she asked who he was anyway. She noted that no one had been able to enter this forest for a long time, so she couldn't understand how he ended up here. The boy noticed that his mother told him not to talk to strangers, so he turned away. Ariel was simply furious. He imagined a knife to her throat. He didn't want to talk to her. The boy noticed that she had opened her eyes. A princess sleeping in the forest wakes up after being kissed by a prince, and she continued to sleep. And then the girl, horrified, asked what he had done. The boy was surprised that she had never heard the story about a princess opening her eyes when she was kissed. He believed that the curse was not lifted because she was a witch. The girl threw him out of the house in horror and asked what kind of curse they were talking about and started calling him names. The boy said he covered her nose and mouth, but she turned pale and looked like she was going to die. He also started talking because he stopped, because his mother told him not to kill people. He almost strangled her. He also said that at first he thought about waking her up by hitting her on the head with a stone, but his mother told him that he shouldn't mess with people's heads. Ariel remarked that her mother had taught him a lot. It sounded strange, but that's why he took the dagger, because the boy thought that she would wake up from the pain in her neck, but she opened her eyes earlier. The girl repeats again, a dagger in the neck can kill, and his mother told him not to kill people. And he even beams when he says this. It's very good that she woke up. She almost died in her sleep. It was too miserable a death for the great magician. She didn't understand where he went again. It would be better if he just went home. Rickert said that this place was filled with the magic of the great sorceress Ashildr. Ariel was surprised to hear that her magic could be felt here, as she thought it was impossible. The woman decided to ask if he knew Ashildr and her magic, and did not understand where he heard this from. In the world outside, hundreds of years must have passed, during which time all the following disappear. So he also realized that the magical power in the forest belonged to her. The boy said there were ancient ruins and magical artifacts. He saw magic circles where Ashildr's power remained. Now it was clear what she had left behind. There was a lot of her power in this forest. Rickert noted that they said time had stopped within him, and that was believed to be the reason artifacts possess much less power. Ariel realized that the magic of this forest surrounded the child. It looks like it's welcoming a powerful wizard. After that, the boy said it was time for him to leave. The woman wasn't even surprised. Rickert said there wasn't much to do here, next time he'd bring toys. And after that, she used the magic circle to teleport. The woman could not verify that he had actually used the magic circle. This is the one that only first-class wizards can use. Maybe he is just a genius, and she thought about it in order to make him her student. But she still decided to give it up because he doesn't come for long anyway, and therefore she won't pay attention and won't think about him. She also told the tree to stop the intruders and not pretend to be a simple tree. After which this child came to her again. He has such a strong presence that she cannot help but notice. He was glad that she was awake again, but Ariel didn't understand how he got through the door. It looks like he has some skills, but the boy said he was simply helped by that tree monster. Ariel now realized that it was true, but she had asked him to stop the boy, not to tear down her door. Ariel asked why the hell he had torn out all his branches in the first place, but the boy said that this was not so, and he almost fell when he ran. She caught him on a tree. The girl was surprised that you had a monster, but the boy said that he simply caught it, but she hoped he wasn't hurt. The forest loved this child. He usually reacts badly to any strangers except this boy, and she senses a tremendous magical power within it. It shines so brightly that anyone who senses the magic will rub their eyes from the brightness. Although she is considered an archmage, she can now understand that the forest is interested in the magical power that overflows it. But this tree is a traitor. They should drive away the trespassers and not play with the child. The boy suggested the tree play in that vacant lot. Ariel began to say that this wasn't his playground. She noticed a wound on his face and realized that it was unlikely to be a wound from playing. It looked like a blow or a cut. It was not very fresh, but she realized that someone was beating the child on a regular basis. Dear Hope, he looks healthy. There are definitely rich families, but he looks kind of beaten up. The boy said there was a magic circle in the garden, but it had to be the size of a large mansion or castle. The only people who could harm him in such a house were his family, parents, brothers, someone close. But why should she even think about that? So Ariel decided that she just wouldn't create misunderstandings without a reason. It's just a puppy, a golden puppy, a dog, that came to play in her yard. A dog with light fur. So she decided to continue ignoring him. It didn't matter whether the boy was hurt or not, but she couldn't help herself and looked back. And then the boy was glad that she was looking at him. But she began to say that this was not so. But the boy was sure that their eyes met. The child will grow up and forget about this forest. She thought that soon everything will calm down again. But this is not so. Someone touched her door, and she decided that it was the boy who had come again. When she saw him, she was in complete horror and asked what had happened to him. She couldn't ignore his wounds anymore because he looked absolutely terrible. A mother and child from the Imperial Palace, where everyone ignores them. The maids decided not to greet this young gentleman. After all, he was the maid's son. It was better to pretend not to notice him. No one dared approach the prince, whose very existence hung in the balance. Then another prince came up to him and called him names, saying that he was still just as stupid. This is Frederick Brian Vondelium, who is Cedric's half-brother. He asked where to hit him today. It was Brian who was born just 5 months earlier. The woman realized that his older brother had beaten him, but she couldn't imagine that someone could be such a baby because he was so beautiful, and she needed to at least protect his face. She believed such beauty could not be destroyed. He lacked even the slightest sense of aesthetics. The boy said he had killed his horse. Ariel thought she misheard, so she asked again. Cedric said that he kept bothering him, and he wanted to kill him, but his mom told him not to. The woman made it sound like he really hadn't killed his brother. He pointed out that it was true, and he just wanted to hurt him a little. He set a trap for him, causing the boy to fall off his horse, and then they took the horse away because it had injured his brother. But Cedric thought it would have been better if he had died, but he got it from the poor animal. He didn't want to kill his brother, because, well, you have to listen to your mother. The woman thought he really was a bit weird. Ariel remarked that it was a shame the horse had died. She thought it was a good thing he was at least thinking about her, even though he hadn't killed her on purpose. Now his brother will be even more annoying, and he thinks Mom told him not to do that. Just like the poem, Ariel didn't think irritation was a sufficient reason for murder. The boy said he was so annoying he wanted to rip his eyes out of his skull, but his mother forbade that too. Rel understood and said that brothers are different after all. She didn't quite understand what was wrong with this child. He was told to be patient until he became an adult, and so he was patient. She hoped that he would restrain himself, and after this, he should not smile so brightly when he said such things. But it's good that the boy listens. His mother put a lot of effort into raising him. One small mistake could mark him down in history as a villain, but she tries to correct it with her teachings. It's simply amazing. Such a person can only be respected. The lady asked what his mother was doing now. The boy said she had died. Her last words were a request not to kill people, so he must fulfill this wish. May she rest in peace. She tried to correct this boy's character until the very end, but the boy could have become even better if he had lived just a little longer. With such an angelic face, he would have achieved a lot. She was shocked that no one was stopping his brother from fighting and gave him some candy. She noticed he had scars that had appeared long ago. These candies were old. The boy's brother burst into the room and shouted that he had killed his horse. And he also shouted that the boy was to blame for breaking his leg, but Cedric said that he should have broken his head too. After this, the older brother hit him and asked how he dared to say such a thing. The older brother said that he would kill him and could not believe that such a yellow child was a member of their family. No one can even stop him. Prince Brian's character is very unpredictable, but he beats Prince Cedric. They shouldn't be foolish. He's a useless, degenerate maid. He's a prince in name only. Cedric is so unneeded that he has only seen His Majesty a couple of times. Brian screamed that he would kill him if he saw him again. After that, Cedric stood up and asked if he was finished yet. This made the prince furious, and he attacked him, shouting like a father for him to die. Ariel understood everything and now knew that he was being bullied because of his mother's origin. Nobody cares that he is being beaten. He is left completely alone after her death. He has to endure everything on his own, and no one cares about him. The boy said that there are servants, they give clothes, food, and other things. But the girl thought it was their job. Cedric said she had a delicious candy, so he asked if there was any more. She gave him more candy, so she was glad she had stocked up earlier. Ariel thinks she now understands why the child stayed in the forest for so long and always returned to play. It's all because no one is watching him and no one plays with him. She can imagine how he lives among many people in a large mansion. Ariel would have stayed here too if she had been in his place and could have endured the loneliness of the mansion. But that's all, only when he comes to this forest can he smile so sincerely. That's why he keeps hanging around her. Ariel started asking why he was taking off the bandages, and the boy noted that he just thought he was feeling better. The girl asked him again if he really thought it was so, and was then surprised, because she had done it herself, but the effect was quite good. But she couldn't have imagined it would help so much. The boy was in shock. The witch knows her medicines too. He really does feel better. Ariel started saying that she was not a witch, so the boy asked who she was then. The girl fell silent, and he asked again who she was. She didn't know what to say, because she couldn't say that she was the great sorceress Ashildr, who lived hundreds of years ago. Well, then he will ask why she still lived, and why she doesn't use magic if she is a sorceress. He might ask why she isn't standing there. Will be a lot of questions, so it's necessary to hide the fact that she is the sorceress Ashildr. So the girl said that he could just call her Ariel and not witch. The boy also introduced himself and said that his mother called him Sidi, so she could call him that too. Ariel noted that he always came here to play, and he could continue to do so. No need to worry. He can come here as much as he wants. The boy became embarrassed and noticed that she smiled too. From that day on, almost nothing changed. Seti often came to the forest to play and played by himself as before. And he kept coming back with bruises from fights. He was hurt again, and he said it was nothing. But Ariel decided she shouldn't talk nonsense. Life with a child was temporary anyway. She hadn't studied medicine, but it was worth trying, and then she'd be able to create a more effective medicine. It was a fleeting moment. The child will lose interest in this place, never to return here again. They will be together until this happens, and she can help him not to get hurt early. She can treat him so that he heals faster. She wished he would not feel any more commas, no matter what wounds he received. She thought she could take care of him in any situation without harm to either of them. However, one day he returned and was covered in blood with a knife in his hands. She didn't understand what happened, but the boy just looked at her and smiled. Ariel didn't understand why he was like that, what he had done. He looked like a maniac, and why he had that expression on his face. He was so smug. She asked him where he got so much blood from, but the boy said that it wasn't his blood. The woman said that she knew because there were no wounds on him, and she did not understand how he could be in such a situation. Maybe he was just hungry, because the boy asked her if there was any food. Later, he remarked that it was all because of his brother. The woman began to believe that he simply poured blood on him because he was quite a child. He mocks and hits his brother. Cedric said he was bragging about his new horse. He called him and said that he had a new horse. He thought the boy would kill this one too. A servant approached them and began to tell His Highness that this horse hadn't been trained yet. But they'll take care of everything. But Brian said he took the biggest one on purpose because it's dangerous. After this, the horse came closer to the boy, and his brother thought that he was quite scared. After that, he hit the horse on the back, and it went wild. But when it began to attack the boy, it started bleeding from an artery in its neck. The servants did not understand at all how this was possible and how it happened. The boy noticed that there was danger and asked what to do because another one had died. Cedric told his brother to take better care of his pets. This scared Brian so much that he wet himself. He ran to his mom to complain. The woman realized that this meant that first, he imagined a dagger to a man's throat, and now to a horse. The boy said it was simply dangerous, and he could have died. After all, he was still a child and could have been scared. So the woman said that he was right, and he needed to think about his safety. He could attack first if his life was threatened. Cedric was doing this for the first time, so he wasn't aware it was better to move away so that the blood wouldn't get on him. Ariel told him not to think about things like how to become better at murder. He is not a criminal. Others should think about their behavior. And now she's offered to bathe him. She knows he has personality and behavioral issues, but she's the exception. She shouldn't be attacked. Even though she is not responsible for him, she needs to protect her neck because there is no point in teaching someone else's child. But she tries to wash him off, but she does not wash off. It's a good thing she still had Daniel's clothes. She almost made him walk around in just a towel. She was shocked that no one cared that he was walking around covered in blood. The boy said that his servants were usually busy, so no one came. The woman began to explain that he was simply being fooled. Cedric said that Ariel was frowning again, but he was fine. The lady did not understand at all how he could be okay. Meanwhile, outside the window, the tree was already waiting for the boy. He almost forgot that the monster was worried about him, and that's why he said that he was fine. Mom warned that after her death, people who got close to him would have ulterior motives. She said that no one would do anything for him for free, so he needed to be careful. Ariel believed it was true Sadie's mother would be very worried about leaving him alone. Let's Go traces of her upbringing remained in all her memories. The child was left without even his helpless mother, so it is completely unclear how he will cope with the cold in people's hearts. He must be cautious, suspicious, and prejudiced. It's the only way he can survive into adulthood, but they can't even imagine the loneliness he feels in the process. She said this with an understanding of what it would lead to. A mother who leaves her small child. She could only speak to him with tears in her eyes. She probably couldn't rest in peace because she was so worried about him. It would have been easier if his personality had been simple and straightforward. But he was born a man who could raise doubts in the souls of even the most indifferent people. Ariel said that he was handsome, and the boy was surprised and asked again. The lady was shocked that no one had ever said such a thing to him. The boy said he'd simply always been called ugly. In principle, this is true. A child with a knife is scary, especially when he is covered in blood and smiling. After which, the boy said that Ariel was beautiful too. The lady agreed and remarked that his eyes were definitely not deceiving him. But the boy said that he was telling me about her face, so the lady told him to return her praise. Cedric just wanted to say that she has a colorful aura around her, and it's beautiful. Only Ariel has these colors, they swirl and shine. Here is a little red, big and yellow, above her is a green star. They all glow so beautifully. The woman was shocked that he could see them. He seems to have magical eyes. That's the sign of a great wizard. So the girl decided to drag him along with her and said that he should remember the shape of the circle. He had to match the colors. But the boy didn't understand what she was talking about and kept asking. Ariel told him again to connect the small red dot with the green one and add magic. If he sees magical lines, then he will not have to study the theory of magic and go the hard way. It will be enough to connect several dots in front of his eyes, and the magic circle will be built itself. What he did was just great, and now he has to make a big red dot. The boy was simply delighted because he was able to use magic. But Ariel said that he only connected two, but when he used more, they were surrounded by fire. He was shocked that he did it. Ariel couldn't believe it. It was at least a mid-level fire magic circle, and he was trying to tell me he'd built it with 2 points. She immediately started telling him to use water magic immediately. The trees were in bad shape, But the boy immediately quickly created a circle of water. Everyone was shocked the boy only gave away what he had drawn. Well, the magic circle appeared on its own, and it seems to have worked. Ariel didn't understand what the hell it was, or how it even worked. The girl said that he was a genius, because it was simply impossible to meet a magician with such potential in the Forbidden Forest. She thought it was fate, and then she became greedy. She wanted to raise a child with great talent, and she made a choice she shouldn't have. The boy said Ariel was wet. She understood that it would take a long time to correct his character. But still, she also thought that the main thing is not character, but magic, because it is enough to simply make him a strong magician. But her kind side believed that time passed slowly here, and if Seti stayed for long, it would grow very slowly. While the evil part of him thought that he would grow up later, and it thought that it would take 10 to 15 years to learn. I'm bothering someone else. They say people with black hair are never grateful, but his hair is light, not black. Everything will be fine, so it's better to wean him off, wash him, and then he'll become even more beautiful. The boy wondered what Ariel was thinking, because she was mumbling something under her breath. She asked Sidi if he wanted to study mine. I'll have to teach him. Still, she decided that she'd figure it out later, and everything would be fine. This was a rather poor decision, based on poor judgment. The boy was surprised, and asked again if Ariel wanted to teach him magic. She said it would be fun, and something to write about, and he would become strong enough to defeat Brian. She just waited impatiently for his answer, and the boy didn't even know what to say. Sidi said that if Ariel wants it, he'll try. He thinks Brian will still resist. That's great, and then next time she'll give him some advanced book. We need to go down to the basement. The boy smiles again, very brightly. However, the boy noted that she was really good at it. Ariel thought about which book to choose for him, and collected several. She decided to start with one book, and when the boy opened it, there was a voice that said these were letters. She was surprised that he didn't know the letter. The boy said he had never read anything like it before. The girl was shocked that the young master of a large estate had not even been taught to read and write. Usually, people hire tutors from an early age. The boy said he had them until his mother died. The woman realized that things were back in his family. The perfect way to bully a child and turn him into a useless bastard. They do not teach and excite him, so that he cannot run away anywhere, even when he is an adult. So Ariel decided that she had to ruin this plan. The lady said that they would study hard, and he would become a very smart magician. He could just trust her. She asked him to wait because she could look for basic books to learn the letters from. The boy said that he knew modern letters, but not the ancient language that we are thousands of years old, and she was trying to teach him this. It sounded fun, so he decided to give it a try. There were a lot of books in the basement, so she came over, but she wasn't sure there was anything basic. Then she found a picture book and decided that it wouldn't cover everything she needed, but it would be useful, so she could give it a try. It's completely unclear what Daniel was thinking when he assembled this thing in the magic lab, but she still won't understand the idea. Then the boy came into her and asked who Daniel was. She mentioned her when she gave him clothes, so he wants to know who she is. He thought there was someone else there, but the woman denied it. She said that there wasn't any more because he died a long time ago. So this is the basement, and there are a lot of books here. It's where she usually doesn't count things like picture books, and when they figure out the base, she will let him read everything else. There will surely be something rare here that is not found in the outside world, and he will become the best wizard. She suggested he take a look at this since he was here. This book of fairy tales. These are the letters he must learn. When winter arrived, she decided that was enough for today. She noted that he knew most of the letters, so they could start teaching him. The basics took a long time. Cedric said he sees magical power that others don't, so he thinks simply memorizing the magic circles is enough. The woman did not understand what he was talking about. Of course, with such vision, it was easy to start, but he would not gain deep knowledge. If he understands the principles of magic, he will be able to use them, create new circles, and quickly memorize existing ones. There is a huge difference between spell groups and understanding the principles, and he shouldn't think that magic is that simple. The boy remarked that she was something of a fanatic, even though she didn't use it herself. It's unclear why an archmage couldn't be a fan of magic. He said that if they were finished, then he would go. But the lady asked him to stop. She told him to take the book because it contains simple magic circles. It would be great if he looked at it. He could take it with him and read it in his free time. The boy realized that it was like a gift to him. Ariel was surprised and pointed out that she'd asked him to study it and he could take it if he wanted. The boy was delighted and smiled because the book was now his. He was very happy that it was his book and said that it was very beautiful, and he really liked it. It looked like it was the first time he had received something like this. Now the boy understood how much he could increase today. But here are ancient magical symbols from the kingdom of Arundel. He doesn't sense Ariel's magical power, but she has deep knowledge enough to teach others. The girl who slept in the middle of a forest filled with magic. She lives peacefully with monsters and understands the ancient description, so he is very interested in who Ariel is. The more he learns about her, the more curious he becomes. It's like that curiosity that Mom talked about. He wants to know more. He wants to know everything about Ariel. And in the middle of the night, someone entered his room. When the boy woke up, he was still sleepy. He had been reading a little yesterday. Well, then he saw that the book was gone. He needs to find the service that is responsible for this room, because he could see the book. Meanwhile, the servant said that he noticed something else when he entered the room of this prince. Brian believed he had stolen the book, but he didn't understand why. It was the book that Ariel gave him, so he got angry. They noticed that the boy was looking at them with a murderous gaze. Brian didn't understand at all what to do because he was very scared. His little brother looks like he is about to be killed. He was scared of killing the horse, so he was still afraid. He turned around and immediately ran to his mother, but Cedric screamed at him to give him his book. Then a knight came up to them and asked what had happened. Cedric said that this man stole something from a member of the imperial family. The knight promised to look into it. A probationary period pay cut, they might trust him with something heavy, but the boy thought this was odd. If you follow the laws of the imperial palace, the thief's hands should be cut off. The punishment must be appropriate, so he ordered the knight to do it right now. But the man said that this was an old law, but the boy turned to him and asked if he had to do everything himself. The servant immediately fell to his knees and began begging for mercy. He began by saying that this was an order from His Highness Brian. But the knight said that he was a useless servant and did what the prince ordered. He couldn't understand how a servant dared shift responsibility onto the imperial family. Punishment would be carried out on the spot. The knight thought Cedric was scared, especially since there was blood all around. But the boy said he wasn't scared. The maids started saying he didn't even blink, and that really scared them. They did say he was a bit weird, but now he's completely different from normal people. Then the boy turned to her, and she simply looked at them. He was thinking about how to return this book. He was not like other children from birth, and this is not the first time he has heard such conversations. Cedric showed almost no emotion and could not distinguish between good and bad. Rather, I didn't know in principle that there was a boundary between these concepts. His mother, who tried to pay attention to his surroundings, always worried that he would be separated from ordinary people because of his differences, so she held him back and taught him new things. They were together with the cat, and Mom said she liked him because that's how they behave with people they like. This made the boy smile. His mother sat with him, and the cat purred. People don't do that, only cats, so he shouldn't repeat it. While they were walking, the boy told his mother that cats were strange. They were small and covered in soft fur. Mother remarked that they were cute, and he could pet them and call them cute. He could do it just like she did with him. The boy asked, "What about the flowers?" Because they were also small and soft, and it looked like they needed to be stroked too. The mother smiled and said that wasn't how it worked, but the boy didn't see the difference. The woman didn't understand at all what to do with this child. He had a long journey ahead of him, but the cat, which was not accidentally encountered on a walk, was dead. Mom said it looked like a horse had run over her, and the boy said cats are cute and you should pet their heads. He tried to pet the cat, but his mother said that he shouldn't. The dead are buried and mourned. The boy was surprised and asked about this again. Afterwards, he and his mother buried the kitten. Cedric didn't quite understand what sadness was, but cats are beautiful flowers too, so he decided to leave them here. Mother said that this was true. He should also continue his studies. Cedric doesn't understand yet, but with time, he will learn to perceive big emotions. The boy stood out from other children, but his mother still tried to teach him everything. She said that you can't kill people without reason. You can't hurt them. You can't show your talents to others, and must hide until he becomes an adult and build up strength to survive. I need to think before I act. I need to be impulsive. I need to restrain myself. The boy said that he understood, so she could rest. Mother told him that she loved him very much and called him her baby for the last time. She closed her eyes forever, full of regret. At the funeral, he heard her tell him that she hoped he would one day experience all the emotions, and then he would find one person in particular, someone dear enough for him to value them and become greedy. This was her last will. After her death, the whole world turned out to be gray people without flowers. He was not interested in anything. He was not happy. After his mother's death, he became even darker, and he doesn't know what could be dear to him and whether he wants anything at all. With these thoughts in his mind, he wandered around the palace unnoticed. Then he went into the forest and found an old magic circle at the edge of the imperial palace garden. He was curious about the circle in the abandoned part of the garden, where no one goes, and thought it was broken, and he senses Ashildr's magic, which is found in artifacts. The magic is beautiful points of light that shimmer in the air, colored lights floating among a sea of gray people. His magic is drawn into the circle, and he begins to act. After that, he found himself in an unfamiliar place and did not understand where he was. He thought he was in the forest. It seemed like Kruger was activated by his magical energy, and he was still working. And so he found himself in that forest. Then he came across a house that was right in the middle of the forest. When he walked in, he realized that this was the place where he could truly see colors. The world had always been gray, and only magical dots could be different until he met Ariel, who was not like other people. The magical energy surrounding her glowed brightly, but she was asleep. This girl was incredibly beautiful, and she was practically shimmering. He really wanted to see how she moved. He wanted to see her eyes. He was interested in what color they were. He would see when she woke up, so he decided to wait here. He was so interested, but for some reason, she slept for a very long time. He thought that she was too tired, so he would have to wake her up. He took the stone, but then he remembered that his mother told him not to hit people on the head, so he better go home. He wondered if she was awake, and then the monster started touching him. He turned to the tree and asked if it wanted to say something, since it looked like he was a monster pretending to be a tree. In the east of the empire, there is a forest that is teeming with monsters, and time has stood still in it. No one could enter there. Various legends were composed about it, and that place often appeared in children's fairy tales. Thorny vines and monstrous trees. It seemed he had found himself in the eastern forest. Perhaps time has stopped, because the forest is filled with Ashildr's magic. The relics in the imperial palace don't even come close. He turned to the tree and told it to move because it could move. He asked who he was, and believed that the sorceress Ashildr had created him, and she created this forest too. He believed that this tree knew the woman who slept in the house. He thought it was Ashildr, although that was unlikely. He would have felt magic in her, but there was none at all. Cedric's eyes can detect magic in the bodies of other wizards. A magical forest with monsters where time stands still. An unknown sleeping woman. He had seen something like this before. This is a fairy tale that my mother read to him. There was a forest of monsters where time does not exist. There was a sleeping princess and a prince who had to defeat the monsters to save her. He thought there about how he could wake up the princess, and then remembered that there had to be a kiss. The boy decided he could do it, so he quickly went to the house. He kissed her forehead, and she thought there that if the prince kissed her, she would open her eyes. He is a prince, so the princess must wake up. But she didn't wake up, which means she's not a princess. The boy had already begun to believe that she was some kind of witch, and did not understand how to wake her up, how to make her open her eyes. If he couldn't hit her on the head or strangle her, then a little pain would wake her up, so he decided to stab her in the neck with a knife. He had already pointed the knife at her neck, and thought that it would be better to cut the skin rather than stab. The blade is sharp, it won't be easy. But then she began to open her eyes. The woman was shocked when she saw a child in front of her who was holding a knife. "He can't take his eyes off me." The woman started saying that if I hit him in the neck, the man would wake up and die. Golden, a deep golden color that you could drown in Ariel's eyes, were golden. She started screaming at him to put the dagger away. The boy remembered his mother's words about how someone else would come into his life someday and make him greedy. That day, he desired something for the first time. Cedric turned to Ariel and asked if there was any magic for the smell of blood. She wasn't even surprised by such a question, so she asked him what happened. He explained that it was simply a problem with Brian's servant. He stole the book Ariel had given him to give to his brother. The woman was furious when she heard about this Brian again, and just wanted to curse him. He attacks me personally, only using tricks to stab me in the back. Nothing can be done. You just need to forget about this book. It was a basic textbook, and she will give him another one. But the boy was upset because this was the first book that Ariel gave him, and it belonged to him. He has almost nothing, and he never wanted anything, and therefore he must keep at least these things. He does not want to give them away. So the boy said he had stolen it. But the woman tried to explain that it was the servant's fault. Cedric pointed out that he had cut off the servant's hands as punishment. The woman approached him and stroked his head, telling him everything was right. The boy was surprised because the others were afraid and she was praising him. Ariel thought it was better this way than to endure this abuse. The servant had repaid her in kind, that was true. So she said he was doing well and also offered to clean the blood off his cheeks. Cedric was surprised she wasn't afraid of him, since she had been before Ariel said she'd never been afraid of him. She'd just been cautious since he'd pointed a dagger at her. And everything's fine as long as it doesn't harm her. Stains can be removed, but that smell is difficult. There should be some herbal soap here that she made recently, but she can't find it. He also thinks that everything is fine until his things are taken away. From the day Ariel opened her eyes, he wanted to take her away, even considered her his own. He likes this forest because there's no one here. No one will take Ariel. She asked him to screw it down because it's hard for her to clean it. But the boy didn't want this because the soap got into his eyes. She is responsible for attracting the attention of the prince, who had nothing and wanted nothing, so Ariel should not leave him and should not take herself away from him. The Imperial Palace's magic tower. They had never seen such magic circles. Who would have thought such a simple circle existed? They were sure that it definitely worked, so they already asked if they had tried using something similar. The man asked where they got the book, and they thought it belonged to Prince Cedric, but they took it from Brian, and many didn't even know Cedric. He was born to a maid who died, and he often disappeared, perhaps having discovered the unknown ruins. But they would have been the first to know. So I really want to know where he got it, and who could have given such a valuable book to a principal from power. The ancient ruins are not at all like an ordinary situation period. A man named Ansel Price, the second son of the Price family apprentice to the Chamberlain of the Imperial Palace, informant for the truth seekers. He said that he came with a report and said that he checked the book. It belongs to a kingdom that disappeared 1,000 years ago, but it is untouched by time. The owner of the book is Prince Cedric, but he doesn't know what to do. The lady asked him to follow her. She did it secretly and acted according to the circumstances. The gentleman understood her, and bowing said that everything would be done. They understood Cedric and thought that they were hiding well and were not noticed. While the boy saw everything, he came closer to them, and they were very scared. They started running. He watched this circus. This irritates him at one glance. It is clear that these are the tower mages. So carelessly, he is pursued. And perhaps Ariel's book was so amazing. Brian is furious that the mages took his things from him. Because of them, he'll have to be more careful moving into the forest, because he doesn't want to get caught out of the blue. But again, he sensed something. Well, when I looked, I didn't see anyone. He thought there was someone there. It seemed he'd made a mistake, but he decided to teleport anyway. The man was relieved, as they hadn't been noticed. The mages were so stubborn that he became wary. He hadn't known there was a magic circle in the garden, and assumed it was a relic left by a Shilder. Teleportation circle, now it's clear that it can be used. But still, it was interesting to see where His Highness Cedric went. Meanwhile, the boy ran up to Ariel and was very happy to see her. He asked for forgiveness for not coming for 2 weeks, and some people from different countries began to surround him. Ariel noted that he said he wouldn't be able to come for a few days, but it ended up lasting 2 weeks. It's hard to tell time apart in the forest. Cedric couldn't understand why they wouldn't leave him alone. It's disgusting. They could at least do it discreetly, but it's too obvious that they are from the tower. It seems like mages still lack social skills, and she said that's just how they are. But that's bad news. If the forest is discovered during the investigation, she will have problems. She said she would tell him about a magic trick that would hide traces. It will help you lose your tail. Cedric was very surprised that such a thing even existed. The wind erases sounds. The earth hides traces. This is how it happens. The boy decided to try, and he succeeded right away. He wasn't happy yet because now he wouldn't be discovered, and that was just great. Now he'll be able to sneak out of the house unnoticed. Ariel said she'll give him a book just in case, so he can study from it if he can't make it. Today's lesson also flew by. The time spent in the forest became their shared secret. Living with him in the forest was always fun in the autumn. They played music with the help of magic and danced. In winter, they filled the room with tangerines and ate them while admiring the snowfall. He told Ariel to look, because the berries were already sprouting. In the spring, she used magic to create the fruits and berries they picked. And in the summer, they cooled off with rain magic. She told the boy to control the power, because it should have been rain, but instead it turned into some kind of ocean. In this way, they went through different seasons together. That night, the lady noticed that the monster looked like he was waiting for someone, and she believed that he was waiting for Sidia. She told me not to get attached to him, because he was a person from the outside world who would disappear in an instant. Over hundreds or thousands of years of their life, it will become a fleeting memory. But the child appeared again when she was alone for a long time. This is her little student, a little while, or a long life you can spend at least a little time with him. The girl remarked that she looked perfect on him. Cedric didn't even blink. He never stopped to look at the outside world. And the child grew up with him. He found the clothes in a room that had not been used for a long time. He believed that these were the clothes he wore as a child. The clothes that were too big for him fit almost perfectly. Now he can put them on with ease. After that, Ariel asked how old he was. He's 15 now. Ariel was surprised, and Cedric approached them and noted that he had almost caught up with her height because he had become taller. Ariel pointed out that standing on tiptoes was unfair, so the boy tisked. Cedric remarked that he would soon grow even taller. That's strange. Something seems wrong. Sadie spent a lot of time in the forest, so he should be a few years behind his peers in height. But he grew up like this. 15 years really suits his appearance. It's as if the time-stopping magic of this forest doesn't affect him. At night, Ariel approached the magic circle and wondered what she should do. Time should flow slowly for all creatures in the forest, but it doesn't work for CD. This means that his magical power surpassed the one she used to seal the forest. He is young and cannot reveal his full potential. When he grows up and learns to use his full power, it is his power that will destroy the seal of the forest. And here she will have to feel it again, but she does not agree to it. This shouldn't happen. This is what she can do, what she must do. The guy didn't understand what was going on, because the magic circle wasn't working. It seemed to be broken, because he couldn't interact with it at all. The magical power is transmitted, and on a large scale it starts as if the flow is blocked somewhere. If this circle is okay, then the problem is in the grave, and something happened to the magic circle on the other side. He didn't understand why this was happening and what was happening. He tried to ask Ariel what was happening. The magic circle wasn't working, so he wanted to know what happened to the forest's magic. Ariel knew she didn't have the strength to seal it completely. She could only interfere with the flow to block the movement. He spoke to her because he was sure she could hear him and was asking her to open the circle. His voice was leaking and she heard it. But it's okay. She knew that one day he would have to leave the forest. It's just that this day came a little early. The house seemed unusually empty, and she cried that it was all because Sadie would not come anymore. One moment of deviation from ordinary life. Now everything is fine. You can forget about everything. She decided that she would put the books away first. She needed to cheer up already, because it wouldn't be useful. She needs to take out the dishes and clean up. He took off his clothes and left them in disarray on the floor, which left her confused. She wondered why he had to throw them around when he could have folded them neatly. He seemed to have checked every corner of the house, even her underwear drawer. His actions seemed completely incomprehensible and slightly frightening. When she looked at his hair, she noticed how beautiful it was. The golden strands shone as if the sun itself had touched them, but his hair was everywhere, and she felt as if he had shed his fur like an animal. She even thought he was marking his territory, as if asserting his right to the house. It was as if he'd left his mark a sign of his presence. It both angered her and left her feeling confused. Now it's time to clean up, get rid of the clutter and all traces of his presence in the house, and start to forget about what happened. She tried to convince herself that everything would work out. It just took a little time for the emotions to subside and for her life to return to normal. Cedric will probably lose interest soon, since there is nothing left here to hold him back. He would get bored and stop thinking about her. But suddenly she felt dizzy and she realized that deep sleep was approaching. She remembered the house was protected by a cleaning spell. There was no need to clean it. Time would erase any traces. The best thing she could do now was to go to bed and allow herself to get some rest. She hoped that she would wake up in a few years, and by then, Cedric would have already forgotten about her and given up trying to find her. Then she would be able to stop hearing his voice, which still echoed in her head, calling her endlessly. Rumors had long circulated in the palace that something was wrong with Prince Cedric. Everyone was convinced he had completely lost his mind as they had noticed his strange behavior. It was in the very place the servants were whispering about that the suspicious magic circle was located. According to eyewitnesses, Cedric spent all his free time near it. The prince sitting in the center of the magic circle desperately called out for someone very important to him. His voice was piercing, and he kept repeating one name, Ariel, as if he were obsessed with the sole thought of bringing her back. One day, the maids accidentally noticed the prince moving in their direction. They were overcome with panic, as no one wanted to become the object of his attention, especially in his current state. Cedric himself couldn't figure out what to do to see Ariel again. His thoughts wandered, searching for an answer, but it seemed futile. He felt the only way to her lay through the forest where she belonged. On his way into the forest, he encountered a strange man. Their meeting was unexpected and awkward, as Cedric was completely lost in his thoughts. The stranger, noticing the prince's confusion, immediately apologized for the accidental collision and politely inquired if everything was all right. However, this polite gesture fell on deaf ears. The prince coldly motioned for the man to step aside, accompanying his words with a wave of his hand, as if he were merely an annoying obstacle in his way. The blond man watching the prince couldn't help but notice how much his condition had worsened. He began to think a different approach was needed to help, or at least understand what was happening. The prince had accumulated a multitude of books about curses, monster forests, witches, and temporal anomalies, but they all seemed useless in the search for answers that could help Cedric. They had only a smattering of information about the place, and it could only be reached with the help of a magical circle. The path was dangerous and mysterious, requiring precise knowledge. Suddenly, he noticed a stack of books that caught his attention. His curiosity grew. What were these volumes, and why were they there? He wanted to solve this mystery. Ariel once mentioned that these books were incredibly valuable. She instructed him to take care of them so that they wouldn't lose their magical power or become damaged. But the boy couldn't understand why he needed to collect so many books at once. After all, just one was enough to study. A whole mountain of tomes on magic towered before him. It was his homework. To study the circles and learn to memorize them, Ariel warned him that she would be busy and he should work on his own. The boy decided to focus and put maximum effort into his studies. But suddenly, his thoughts turned to the question, how long did she plan to leave him alone? It seemed she had deliberately blocked the circle so he couldn't come to her. He felt a twinge of doubt. Did she really want him to refuse? It didn't seem like a joke at all. It was as if she thought he wouldn't find another way to reach her, but he wasn't about to give up so easily. The boy knew that the forest could be reached without the magic circle. He just needed to understand the best way to get there and find the optimal route. He was determined to find out, because he needed to get into the forest. He understood that this was part of his destiny, and he couldn't leave it unfinished. After long hours of study, he fell asleep at his desk, exhausted and frustrated. The silence in the room was broken only by his steady breathing. The maids, noticing the silence, began carefully tidying the room. But as soon as they approached his things, he abruptly woke up and grabbed one of their hands. He ordered the maids not to touch his things, threatening them. His words were harsh. The maids froze in fear, unsure how to react. Cedric reminded them that he could take their hands if they disobeyed. There was no humor in his voice. The atmosphere in the room grew tense. It was a terrifying moment. One of the maids recalled a rumor that he'd chopped off another servant's hand as a child. She prayed it wouldn't happen. Cedric's behavior was truly alarming. He was said to have become even stranger lately, and many believed he had gone mad. On the table lay the book Ariel had left behind. For him, it was the only trace left. He stared at it for a long time, trying to understand its meaning. The boy couldn't understand why Ariel had left him. She had betrayed him, and this fact caused him unbearable pain. The desire to find her grew stronger. He wanted to meet her to settle the grievance, but he knew he couldn't kill her. Then he came up with another plan. He would lock her in a room where there would be only darkness, and no one but him could enter. She would stay there forever. She wouldn't run away. She wouldn't leave him. But first he needed to reach the forest to make his plan come true. This was the first stage of his plan, but how to get there without money and power? This question demanded an immediate answer, and he began searching for a solution. Cedric knew he needed to become stronger, so no one would dare tell him what to do. He strove for absolute freedom. This was the first point of his plan, to reach the eastern monster forest. But he didn't know how to do it without power and money, as his situation left much to be desired. His desire for independence grew stronger. He didn't want anyone telling him how to live and what to do, especially under the current circumstances. At that moment, a blond man approached him. He seemed to understand Cedric's intentions and asked if he was planning to go to the eastern monster forest. The man explained that he had seen a magic circle leading there. It was this circle that the prince used to travel to this place. Cedric didn't understand what they wanted from him. He waved them off, claiming he was no longer working. Ansel, however, clarified that the magical flow had been blocked. Despite this, Cedric was certain he had to get into the forest. He even asked if Ansel knew how to get by without the magic circle. Ansel noticed that the forest was full of monsters. Traveling there would require not just warriors, but an entire army capable of handling this challenge. The mention of an army made Cedric chuckle. He knew perfectly well that he had no way of creating one. The man seemed to be mocking him, but then Ansel said something unexpected. He believed Cedric could become emperor. After the death of the crown prince, first in line to the throne, the palace forces were divided, and the struggle for power became fierce. The second prince received the support of the knights. The third, the son of a saint, relied on the temple. The fourth was assisted by his maternal grandfather, the leader of the aristocrats. Cedric chuckled at the idea. With his background, and a mother who'd been a maid becoming emperor, seemed ridiculous. Ansel reminded that he possesses magic that is unique and inaccessible even to the most experienced modern wizards. The empire relied on science and technology, and then on magic and magical engineering. This opened up new possibilities. There were people who wielded influence, but hadn't yet joined the factions. Ansel promised to pass this power on to Cedric. But in return, he asked for one thing: permission to accompany Cedric to the eastern forest. This condition was extremely important to him. There, he said, lay the truth sought for hundreds of years, the secret of a war that nearly destroyed the world and the force that ended it. Ansel believed they could unlock the secrets of the vanished world. His determination impressed Cedric, though he still didn't trust him completely. Ansel introduced himself as an officer second class and a seeker of truth. He assured him that he would be Cedric's strength and a loyal ally. He promised to protect him to the end so he wouldn't regret his decision. Ansel wanted Cedric to trust him. The man added that with the support of magicians and magical engineers, they would be able to achieve success and open the way to their goal. Ansel recounted how the enemies were defeated and the nobles submitted, allowing Cedric to seize the throne. Now that the preparations were complete, they could head into the forest where Ariel was hiding. Cedric was surprised that Ansel was talking not only about himself, but also about some other unknown person. Ansel explained that he was a second-class officer and a seeker of truth. His task was to help Cedric. Ansel will be a force for His Highness, and in exchange, Cedric will help him in their goals. Ansel promised to protect His Highness to the end, so that he would not regret his decision. Soon, they will open the way with the help of magicians and magical engineers supporting the forces of His Highness. They secured the loyalty of the knights, defeated their enemies, and subjugated the nobles, securing the throne for themselves. Cedric was able to become emperor, and Ansel did everything possible to ensure the success of His Highness. The man reported to His Highness that the preparations were completed as ordered. They can now go to the forest where Ariel is hiding. Ariel woke up and wondered how long she had been asleep. Her thoughts were that a lot could have changed in that time. When she left the room, she noticed that her house was clean and tidy. There are no traces, the seal is intact. The magic circle is still locked, which means it is safe. Ariel noticed that she hadn't seen monsters for a long time and hoped that they were keeping a good watch on this place. She felt that everything was okay with her, and that during her sleep, all the emotions that had tormented her before had disappeared. Her heart was no longer broken, but she still felt the need to ask someone for forgiveness. He continued to call her, but now his voice was gone, and she realized that he was no longer there. He was such a child with a beautiful smile and golden hair that had an air of innocence about it. It was her student who looked like a puppy, and she didn't know how many years had passed since they last saw each other. Ariel believed that he had already grown up and hoped that he had left home and found his place in the world of magic. The forest became quiet and peaceful again, as she was used to, and it seemed that everything had returned to normal. But suddenly, she noticed a shadow, and her surprise was no small matter. What was it? She saw a fire in the sky and realized that it was a meteor storm raging over the forest. The wind rose, and with it, stones and leaves flew, disturbing the peace of the forest. The forest began to burn, and Ariel could not understand where this fiery disaster came from. She felt that there was a magician behind this, and his power was great. His attack on the forest was obvious. This mage, possessing powerful magic, seemed to have attacked her forest with the aim of destroying its defenses. But she couldn't understand his motives and shouted at him to stop and block his magic. The monsters began to work together to try to protect the path, and Ariel hurried to run, not knowing what to do. She didn't understand this magician's motives. She needed time, but he had already launched a storm. The wind was so strong that all the trees were struck by lightning, and Ariel became frightened. She knew she should run, but her body wouldn't obey, and she couldn't get up from the ground. In this chaos, it seemed to her that the mage had overdone it, with the power of his magic creating destruction. Cedric approached her and asked if she was okay, explaining that he was the mage who had attacked the forest. He was a man with a proud and arrogant appearance, one who is the master of everything. Ariel couldn't understand why he attacked her, and decided that he wanted to take something from her. He asked her to marry him and called her by name, as if they knew each other. He proposed marriage to her after he destroyed part of the forest. It was a strange and dangerous proposition. Ariel thought it was madness, and he had clearly declared war on her, although he didn't realize it. It was strange. A marriage proposal right after the attack. Ariel didn't know where to begin, since it was their first meeting. She tried to understand who this crazy guy was standing in front of her, blonde with blue eyes. His face was handsome, and she felt that he looked like someone familiar, but she couldn't remember who. Ariel began to think that if that boy grew up a little, he might look like this man in front of her. She couldn't believe it, but Cedric, standing next to her, said that 10 years had already passed. During these 10 years, he missed her very much, and his feelings were deep. She couldn't believe it was the same man in front of her, and asked if he was really Cedric. He smiled back. Cedric explained that he simply wanted to see her, and therefore destroyed the forest, thinking it was the appropriate way. He added that it was his wedding gift and wanted to know her opinion on the matter. Ariel couldn't understand how this could be a gift, especially given the devastation around her. He was surprised that the magic circle was still in place, and she noticed his attention to it. When she turned around, he quickly grabbed her in his arms, not giving her time to think. Ariel tried to understand what was happening and demanded that he let her go, but he ignored her requests. Cedric admitted that he had long wanted to do this, to hold her in his arms and feel close. Ariel was shocked. She couldn't believe that he had been thinking about this all these years, and asked him to let her go. He finally let her go to the ground and took her hands, suggesting that they go to the magic circle. Over the past 10 years, he had changed a lot, becoming an adult, and was no longer the boy she had said goodbye to. He hadn't forgotten the forest, and now he realized that she had used his magic to seal the stream. The circle wasn't working, but Cedric asked her if she thought it would be possible to use it now. Ariel was puzzled by his questions and didn't know what he was going to do. Cedric said that he had come this far for her, and now he would take her with him wherever he went. Ariel asked what she thought, but Cedric smirked and said he wasn't interested in her opinion. Everything was confused. He was no longer that happy young man. Now he was an emperor. The wind and snowfall created a gloomy atmosphere until Cedric stopped looking at her. She looked back and saw that the cores of the tree monster and the thorn vine were unharmed and would soon awaken. The books and records she did not need were collected in the house, and she no longer required them. Ariel was finally leaving the forest behind after many years had passed since the war began. She wondered if everything would be okay with the seal and the other dimension she left behind. Cedric announced that he and the commander of the knights were going to return through the magic circle to the palace, while the other knights were to search the forest. Red, hearing this, stopped him and noticed that he was addressed as His Majesty. Soon they teleported to the palace, and Ariel didn't understand where they ended up. Ansel greeted His Majesty and reported that everything was ready for their arrival as he had ordered. He believed the journey had gone smoothly, and they were ready to move on. Cedric said that it was now time for them to go to the palace and begin the next step. He asked about the preparations, and Ansel confirmed that everything had been carried out exactly according to his instructions. They could start right now, and Ariel asked why they were talking to him so politely. She began to suspect that he had become emperor, and Cedric confirmed her suspicions. He couldn't get into the forest through the magic circle, so he gathered his strength and broke through, becoming the emperor. She couldn't believe it was all so simple. Becoming emperor? It sounded like a fairy tale. Ariel didn't believe that he was a prince because he was just a kid with a rich family, and she was surprised how he became an emperor. Cedric said that a lot had happened, and now was the time for other conversations when they were safe. Now they had enough time to discuss everything that had accumulated over the years. It was a chance to talk about what they had long kept hidden, finally opening up their thoughts to each other. He showed her the imperial palace and told her that it was a place where they would spend a lot of time together, filling up with memories, creating a new world. Ariel was shocked and immediately started asking a lot of questions, trying to understand how long this would all continue and what exactly was happening in her life. He came closer to her and frankly told her that he became emperor in order to get to the forest where he could meet her and fulfill his plans. He seemed to be implying that the entire invasion had been orchestrated for her. The meteor shower, the thunderstorm, all of this, in his view, was also connected to her destiny. He burned down an entire forest. After all, Cedric explained that, as emperor, he could now make Ariel his empress and show her his world. The girl was shocked and didn't know what to say. Even the servants were a little shocked by this revelation and didn't know how to react. She thought it was some kind of nonsense, because she didn't even know the name of the country she found herself in. Everything was alien and incomprehensible to her. The forest was burned, her home was destroyed, and she was left without any shelter, without clarity about what to do now and where to go in this destroyed world. Ariel couldn't understand what kind of marriage proposal was this, in which the partner became homeless, deprived of everything that came before. The emperor showed her the room he had decorated himself, assuring her that Ariel would definitely like it, as he had put a lot of his effort and feelings into it. Now she could rest a little. But suddenly, Ariel asked him to wait to sort out his thoughts until the full situation was resolved. But then she realized he'd locked her in. Horror gripped her as she realized she'd been locked in the room, and it wasn't just an accident, but part of his plan. Now she realized that everything that was happening was a trap, as if she was imprisoned where she could not escape and could not change anything. She couldn't understand why the room looked so strange. Everything was red, from the sofa to the carpet, which resembled blood, creating a sense of uneasiness. The red sofa blanket pillows, curtains, wallpaper, even the carpet was so bright that it seemed as if everything was soaked in blood, creating an eerie atmosphere. She thought she was going crazy. The strange sensation was so strong that she felt as if all this was revenge for the fact that she had once abandoned him. She thought that this red room might be part of some kind of spell or test, but even with that, her mind was still in disarray. But deciding not to think about it, she simply lay down on the bed, trying to find at least some peace, although the internal discomfort was growing stronger. She didn't understand what was going on, how this man who had once been a prince had ended up here, and how all of this was now connected to her life. Cedric couldn't tell her the truth about his identity because she was a stranger to him, so it was only natural that she didn't know his true nature. However, they found common ground and even began to cheerfully teach each other magic, which helped them overcome tension and establish contact. He turned out to be a man who repays his debts fairly. She raised him, and now she's been stabbed in the back, which was a terrible ordeal for her. They say that black-haired animals cannot be tamed. It was a folk belief that seemed to have a hidden meaning regarding her and his relationship, but Cedric had blonde hair. However, this expression was not about hair color, but about the idea that people like animals cannot be tamed. There were many people with black hair in Arendelle, and this gave rise to the belief that they could not be tamed, controlled, or manipulated. Even fair-haired people could be wild and disobedient. And that was what she hated, because such feelings were dangerous and painful for her. When her mind is severely drained, she often experiences nightmares that further drain her strength and plunge her into an abyss of fear and despair. She realized that there was no one around, but she still thought about how to find at least someone who could understand and support her in this situation. She believed that someone, at least someone, had to survive. It was her wish that all this wouldn't be in vain, that her efforts wouldn't be in vain. She heard voices saying that all this was because of His Highness, but she did not understand why everything was happening this way and what to do about it. Ariel was horrified and couldn't believe what was happening. Suddenly, someone appeared in front of her, and she couldn't understand what it meant. She didn't want to believe it. But when she came closer, she hugged the one in front of her, realizing that it was her Daniel, whom she had been waiting for so much. She burst into tears, unsure what to do. Everything that had once been was now lost, and she couldn't figure out how to continue living in this new world. All was lost, and she felt utterly alone. But when she opened her eyes, she realized it was just a dream, a nightmare that was haunting her. It was just a dream, and this room will always be filled with nightmares that haunt her and keep her in constant fear. Cedric sat next to her and asked who Daniel was. He didn't know how much her soul was suffering, and it was a strange question for him, one that shook her. Ariel was terrified and began nervously asking him what he was talking about. At that moment she started to fall, but Cedric caught her. Cedric hoped Ariel was okay. He was worried about her condition, and couldn't help but worry because his feelings ran deep. He wanted to be sure she was okay. Ariel reported that she seemed to be feeling fine, but her words did nothing to reassure Cedric, who remained worried about her. He was still wary. Despite her words, Cedric again asked who Daniel was, as he'd already wondered about him before he was trying to understand what that name meant. Ariel replied that she didn't know him and asked him to move away. She couldn't understand why it was so hard to push him away. Her heart was beating faster with each passing moment. Cedric was surprised by her strength, not knowing how she had become so strong. He noticed how his chest was being squeezed tightly, and her heart was pounding wildly. Ariel was confused by what was happening, and couldn't understand what was happening. Her mind was in turmoil, and she couldn't logically explain her feelings. There was a strange atmosphere between them, and Ariel didn't want to believe it. Everything seemed absurd, but she couldn't shake the strange feeling. Suddenly, the Emperor, with a smile on his face, lifted her into his arms. The gesture was unexpected, but she found it strangely warm and comforting at the moment. Afterwards, he gently returned her to her seat, telling her that she shouldn't overexert herself and that it would be better to sit. He was concerned for her well-being. Ariel hid a lot, and apparently she wasn't about to reveal her secrets. He knew she wouldn't tell him anything important, but Cedric was certain that one day she would reveal everything. That moment was inevitable, and he was prepared to wait, knowing that time was on his side. The Emperor was willing to wait because he knew they had time. He believed Ariel was very tired, and this feeling was difficult for her. She even started having nightmares. Ariel thought there couldn't be anything normal in this crazy place, and it was a challenge for her. But something was wrong with this room. Rel, screaming, declared that the room had been created to take revenge on her. It seemed insane. She felt like someone was trying to drive her crazy. Everything around her seemed dark, and she couldn't find any other explanation. Cedric, smiling reservedly, said it was all done to make Ariel happy. He tried to reassure her despite her anxiety. He reminded her that she loved red, so the room was filled with her favorite color. It was his innocent idea, and she was supposed to appreciate it. Ariel recalled walks with him when he'd talked about the many red flowers around. It added warmth and a touch of nostalgia to her thoughts. He even noticed that her clothes were also red, which seemed to confirm that she really loved this color. He wanted to make her happy in this way. Ariel remembered telling him that red was her favorite color. Everything had seemed simple and warm in those days, and that moment was precious to her. She remembered that conversation and hoped that wasn't the only reason everything was red. Otherwise, it would look strange and ridiculous. Everything was painted red, and it seemed strange. She couldn't find an explanation for it, especially in a situation like this, where everything was so complicated. In despair, she cried out that he didn't understand what he was doing and called him a bastard. It was too complex and absurd for her to comprehend. Cedric decided on this decoration a few days ago because he thought everything should be red. He wanted to create an atmosphere for Ariel. Ansel thought that Cedric was going to lock the Iron Dragon in this room, but the Emperor said that it was all for Ariel, and it was important to him. The room wasn't for revenge. He decorated it for her to demonstrate his care and love. It was an act of thoughtfulness and deep emotion. On the other hand, the room's decor did look strange, and even a little disgusting. It wasn't what she expected. Ariel began demanding that Cedric redecorate the room, making it more normal. She couldn't accept such changes without making adjustments. Cedric admitted he didn't know her preferences, and that was the main problem. He didn't know what she wanted, and that led to misunderstandings. He promised to alter it a little if she didn't like it that much. He was willing to compromise for her convenience and comfort. Ariel asked to remove the lock from the door, but Cedric explained it was for her safety. He tried to convince her it would be for the best. She couldn't understand why a lock was important if the door was locked from the outside anyway, but he insisted it was for her protection and peace of mind. Cedric suggested that she take a bath and eat first, and while she was gone, he would fix up the room's decor to make it more comfortable for her. Ariel was surprised by his proposal and wondered how he had changed so much. He had become a different person, and this confused her. He asked Lady to take her to the bathroom. Ariel was about to ask to be taken back to the forest, but decided to accept the offer instead. Cedric laughed, realizing how easy it was to distract Ariel. He knew her weaknesses and used them to his advantage. He noticed there was too much red and Ariel didn't like it. Ansel promised to fix it, and the room would soon look different. The ladies didn't understand who the woman was with him. She didn't know the rules of behavior and seemed a little strange to them, which only added to their questions. One of the ladies asked her to watch her tongue as she was the Emperor's guest. Her words had to be more careful, otherwise there would be problems. The lady remarked that Ariel should have heard that the Emperor was going to make her Empress. It was a big announcement for everyone. The maids thought it was silly because Cedric had Rosemary, and Violet Ariel was a stranger to them, an alien figure. They discussed how no one had seen this girl and couldn't understand what she was doing there. The maids considered her an outsider and of little importance to the palace. Someone said she didn't understand whose side she was on, and that it was best for her not to interfere in palace affairs. Otherwise, she would be in trouble. The maids warned her that it would be better to keep her mouth shut if she wanted to stay in this palace and not find herself in an unpleasant situation. One of the maids said she didn't want to be killed for associating with this man. They didn't trust the Emperor or his intentions. One of the ladies stated that she would take the guests' clothes and that she should take care of the expression on her face so as not to reveal her excitement. The lady considered her colleague a coward because she was so worried and afraid. She didn't understand what was so scary about this situation. After some minor changes, the room became more inviting. The red accent gave it a more inviting look, rather than a gloomy haunted room. Ariel had bathed and eaten, but she still didn't feel well. Although her body was satisfied, her mind remained restless and tense. She found herself in the very heart of the imperial palace, and this place increasingly oppressed her. There was neither freedom nor peace here. To return to the forest, she needed to pass through the magic circle or find another way. But she doubted she could find a way out. Ariel thought she might not be able to escape this room, and the feeling was overwhelming. She felt like a prisoner. He continued to watch her, and she couldn't get used to his constant presence. Her freedom was limited, and this greatly disturbed her. Ariel was surprised by his growth and asked when he had gotten so big. He used to be small and cute, but now he had changed beyond recognition. Cedric noticed that Ariel seemed to like children, and that he had grown up to be more attractive to her. This confused her again. Ariel didn't understand what he meant. It sounded like he was accusing her of something strange, but she couldn't figure out what exactly he was talking about. Cedric insisted he was telling the truth. She'd dumped him when he'd almost caught up with her height. This was a surprising revelation for her. Ariel began to explain that it wasn't his height that was the issue, but his magic. She'd rather he never grew up, and that was the only way. She couldn't understand why the conversation had gone in such a strange direction, and tried to change the subject to avoid further awkward moments. She decided she wouldn't give in to his provocations. After all, it was all a game, and he was pretending she wasn't going to fall for his tricks. He began to play on her emotions, as if he were crying crocodile tears. But she knew it was a deception, a way to manipulate her feelings. Ariel understood what he was doing, but she couldn't ignore his beauty. Her mind couldn't resist his charms, despite her desire to be strong. She began to think about how to calm him down, how to comfort him, how to wipe those tears from his face. This worried her, and she didn't know what to do. Suddenly, Cedric asked if he should get rid of everyone. His question was unexpected, and she couldn't understand its meaning. Ariel didn't understand what he was talking about, but Cedric explained that he meant all the little children she liked so much. By this, he meant that by getting rid of everyone younger, he would be able to completely capture her attention. Her gaze would be focused only on him. Ariel felt lost and didn't know what to say. His words stunned her, and she couldn't find the right words to express her feelings. She cried out to him not to do anything rash and to leave the children alone. Her voice was desperate, trying to reach his mind. Ariel assured him she had no intention of leaving him, even if he thought she did. Afterward, he hugged her, as if he found comfort in her words. Deciding that was enough for today, he didn't try anything else. However, Ariel didn't understand what he meant. He wanted to stay, but decided to put it off until tomorrow. He knew he had to proceed cautiously, and promised himself they'd sort it out later. Ariel couldn't believe that after everything that had been said and done, he would simply leave. She was left confused, unsure how to react. When he left, he cast magic to seal her in the room. The spell was cast instantly, but she failed to notice. Ariel had no idea that there was a spell on the door that kept her inside. She remained in the dark. She had no magical abilities, but she possessed profound knowledge. However, this was not enough to overcome the barrier. The Emperor believed it best to keep her under strict control so that she wouldn't even think about escape. Her freedom was limited to a minimum. Ariel was confused. She didn't understand what was happening and why he was reacting so sharply to everything around him. He left without explaining anything, leaving her completely bewildered. She felt lost, unable to find a reason for his behavior. He decided he wouldn't let her leave again. A plan was forming in his mind to ensure she would stay with him forever. After becoming emperor, Seti did everything he could to turn the palace into a cage for Ariel. She was to belong only to him. She wouldn't be allowed to leave even if she died here. He wanted her completely locked within his control. Her tears could flow endlessly, but she still remained within that golden cage. Meanwhile, research was underway in the monster forest. Scientists discovered something unusual, but couldn't figure out what it was. They began to think it was an ancient seal of immense power. However, this was not a task they could solve on their own. They lacked the knowledge and experience to make such a discovery. They understood that accidentally breaking this seal could lead to disaster. The situation became increasingly alarming. The decision was made to immediately report the discovery to the Emperor. They reported that a powerful sealing spell had been discovered. The spell bore traces of the work of the great sorceress. Ashildr research ceased due to the lack of a mage of her caliber. It looked as if something terrible was about to burst forth from this seal. The feeling of anxiety grew stronger. The seal resembled a dark hole oozing ominous energy. Meanwhile, the maids were choosing clothes for Ariel in the palace. The head maid personally took charge of organizing her room until another worker could be found. She was temporarily responsible for all her needs. If Ariel needed anything, she was to contact either the head maid or any of the servants. She was provided with a complete list. They also handed her a guide for palace guests so she could navigate her options. After bidding her good night, they departed. Ariel studied the manual and realized she could only visit designated locations. She was overcome by the feeling that her freedom was being restricted. She began to wonder if he was trying to lock her away completely, but she decided not to jump to conclusions so as not to worry too much. When she began reading the manual, she was surprised to find she couldn't understand what was written. The language was completely unfamiliar to her. She was overcome with irritation. She couldn't understand how it was that the language she had used before was no longer accessible to her. The new alphabet and changes in language came as a complete surprise to her. The world around her changed while she remained in the forest. Civilization had advanced, and now it couldn't adapt to the new reality. The reason was its isolation from society. The book she received was written in an ancient language long since out of use. This explained her confusion. Seti, as a member of the imperial family, was taught modern scripts, but Ariel didn't even know the basic elements of the new language. She realized that her knowledge was a thing of the past, and now she looked illiterate. This was especially humiliating for her. The great sorceress, renowned for her intellect, was now unable to read simple text. This was a severe blow to her. It was a complete disgrace. Ariel decided to ask the maid for help, but she didn't even know how to explain her problem. She pondered how best to express her thoughts so as not to be misunderstood. Admitting her weakness was not easy for her. Perhaps she should have simply said that she couldn't read the language, but she was afraid that would put her in an awkward position. She knew other languages, but this one was beyond her. Trying to explain herself, she searched for the right words to avoid misunderstandings. Approaching the alphabet chart, she began to decipher the symbols. It seemed to her that with each step, she was getting closer to understanding, but the maid suddenly shouted, forbidding her to touch the thing. Her reaction was harsh and categorical. The maid probably thought Ariel wasn't polite enough to understand the rules, but she never explained why the item was forbidden. Ariel, in turn, decided to clarify why this was so important. Her question sounded calm, but with a hint of confusion. The maid started shouting that this was the legacy of the kingdom of Arendal, which existed 1,000 years ago. And they say that these ornate and wise notes were left by the great sorceress Ashildr. She said that it was a very precious relic, and did not understand what they would do if a treasure of such a level was damaged. The girl was shocked to learn that 1,000 years had passed, and her work was now called wisdom, while he was called a relic. This left her in complete shock. Ariel said that this was absolutely not the case, and stated with complete certainty that it was clearly not true. She was certain that the situation was far from what was being portrayed. Everything turned out to be much simpler, since it turns out she is the very same Ashildr. And she has something interesting to tell. Those cryptic graffiti on the walls were random drawings made out of boredom during magic lessons. They meant nothing. Ariel sighed and didn't know where to start, not understanding how to explain the whole situation to her because it was completely ridiculous. It had been a full 1,000 years since the world had nearly been destroyed, and if that was indeed the case, then the maid had been mistaken in her statements. The maid expressed dissatisfaction, claiming that she had a limit to her rudeness, despite the fact that she was not familiar with the rules of etiquette. She was shocked by the poor reception and couldn't understand why she was being met with hostility. It was a real blow to her. The maid clearly relaxed, and Ariel believed that if a servant allowed herself to raise her voice, it meant she didn't understand boundaries. The woman loudly declared that they were responsible for the relic kept in the imperial palace, and everyone who did not understand anything should listen to her. Ariel was surprised by this, noting that the maid's manners were completely strange and ridiculous for a servant in such a palace. Ariel noted that she wondered who taught these maids to look down on guests like that without showing proper respect. The atmosphere suddenly changed, and the maid's gaze became arrogant, like that of a high noble, which looked very strange to Ariel. The maid couldn't understand why she was so tense, because she considered Ariel some kind of country bumpkin and didn't expect such behavior. If Ariel was a country bumpkin, it was hard to understand where she got such elegance and gratitude from. Ariel grinned, looking at her. Ariel asked if the maid would stand like that any longer, causing the woman to immediately begin apologizing, falling to her knees. The maid began to beg for forgiveness, not understanding what exactly she should be forgiven for, but she understood that she needed to do it. Ariel noticed that the maid seemed proud and arrogant to her, not accepting the blame for her behavior, but still asking for forgiveness. She also said that the palace she found herself in was strange, and that it was hard to believe that the servants there were allowed to shout at the guests. This confirmed that respect and understanding in this palace were at a low level, since even the workers looked down on the guests. The maid did not calm down, continuing to apologize to Ariel, although she did not understand the reason why her behavior caused such a reaction. Ariel stated that if they were ignoring her as the emperor's guest, that meant they were ignoring Sidi as well, which upset her greatly. She had known Cedric since childhood, before he was a ruler, and had always seen his weaknesses, which led to his humiliation. When he became ruler, she hoped that the situation would change and thought that he would take power into his own hands and start acting. Ariel believed that he should be angry, because to keep the throne, one must be able to manage and show strength and not forgive weakness. She was surprised that he still forgave such disrespect, despite his character, which again confirmed her doubts about his resolve. She came to the conclusion that he didn't seem to care at all what others thought of him, and he genuinely didn't care what was going on. At that moment, the emperor approached them, noticing Ariel, and asked what was going on. Not understanding what had led to this situation, he noticed her among all those present and immediately realized that she was clearly unhappy about something, which drew his attention to what was happening. Cedric took off his jacket and put it on Ariel, saying that she shouldn't go out in pajamas because it wasn't up to par. However, Ariel began to argue with him, claiming that it was not so important at the moment and that there were more important issues to deal with. She noticed that the services in his palace were completely out of line with her expectations, and they clearly did not meet the standards of decency. Of course, Cedric might not care about such things, but she reminded him that he had to educate his servants so as not to disgrace his name. Ariel understood that he might be powerless, but she could not forgive such an attitude, especially in the imperial palace, where there should be different standards. She asked him what he would do if this attitude began to spread to other people, and his authority was threatened. Cedric was struck by her words about him being a powerless emperor, and this made him think about his position and the situation in the palace. He turned to the servants and realized that now such misunderstandings could play into his hands and decided to use this to his advantage. The emperor said that he was indeed powerless, and so he asked Ariel to help him so that she would become his protector in this matter. His words sounded like a request, and he became like a small dog, which made Ariel feel tenderness and sympathy for him. The servants clearly wanted Ariel not to fall for the emperor's tricks, as they did not trust his behavior and suspected his manipulation. But the girl said she agreed with him and that he could confide in her. She decided to support him despite all the strangeness of what was happening. Afterwards, the emperor asked her what had made her rush to leave, and Ariel explained that she had simply been thinking about her situation. She admitted she didn't know the letters, which greatly embarrassed her. Cedric didn't know them either, and perhaps he could teach her, which gave her hope. Ariel admitted that she couldn't read some of the words in the manual, which surprised Cedric, and he asked again to make sure. Then he realized that she couldn't read, and although it looked strange, he still realized that she couldn't read those particular letters. Ariel hastened to declare that this was not so. She simply did not know these letters, but she still hoped that he would stop looking at her with such a smile. She expressed her displeasure when she noticed that he continued to look at her with a smile, as if it was some kind of joke, even though she knew the Arundel script. Cedric repeated that Ariel was illiterate, which irritated her because she thought it was supposed to be a joke and not the truth. She understood that before he would have done everything for her, but now he laughed at her literacy, which showed his easy attitude towards her problems. She said that if he really wanted her to learn, he should do the same as before and teach her a new language. But Cedric replied that she had left him and that things weren't that simple anymore, which left Ariel a little confused. The girl said that he could teach her again, but Cedric replied that she had already left him, and this was a real disappointment for him. After Seti told Ariel she didn't need to study, she was horrified. She couldn't believe her ears and asked repeatedly, trying to understand what was happening. In response, the emperor said the only way out was to rely on her. He strongly recommended that the girl go and rest, giving her time to reflect. He also suggested that it would be best if she simply stayed put and didn't bother him. This decision seemed the most sensible to the emperor at the time. The emperor closed the door behind her and left her in the room. Ariel's furious scream followed, calling him an ungrateful bastard. Her emotions unrestrained. Ariel was certain there was a misunderstanding. She believed the emperor had no power and was worried about it, considering him weak and incompetent. At this point, they debated whether to explain the situation to her. However, the emperor believed explanations were futile, as Ariel wouldn't take it seriously anyway. Cedric understood that Ariel was an unusual person. She possessed an energy that could make many bow down, and this caused him some concern. He sensed something sublime about her that belied her appearance. It was as if she were accustomed to standing above everyone else, confident in her own power. Cedric realized from the very beginning that she was special. Perhaps her status was far higher than he initially thought, though it was difficult to notice as a child. He was shocked that the maid would dare insult her. It was a surprise to him, as he knew her position was much more than that of a simple servant. The woman hastened to justify herself, declaring that this was not true. She claimed she was merely trying to explain something to her guest, but her words had no effect on the emperor. The emperor was furious. He was outraged that the maid had ignored Ariel's words, ignoring her importance. He couldn't understand how she could do such a thing. He brought her in as the future empress, expecting respect, but the maid showed none. The woman confessed to having committed a mortal sin, realizing her mistake. The emperor calmly remarked that if she admitted her guilt, she must be punished. His words left no room for doubt, and the maid understood what awaited her. The woman began screaming and begging for mercy, hoping to be forgiven. She fell before the emperor, but he remained cold and silent. She begged for forgiveness, but the emperor remained silent. Everyone present remained silent, and the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. No one knew what to do in this situation. The emperor noticed that it was too noisy and said that re-education was necessary. He sensed a sense of disrespect toward Ariel and couldn't ignore it. Batman promised to look into the matter, and the palace soon found itself in complete disarray. Everyone was at a loss, trying to figure out what would happen next. The emperor brought a woman introduced as belonging to the circle of magicians. She was sloppily dressed, her hair disheveled, but her presence was no accident. She looked dirty and disgusting, but since she was brought by the emperor, her position must be somehow important. This caused surprise and bewilderment among everyone. The woman hadn't had a proper upbringing. She couldn't read and didn't know even the most basic things, which caused even more confusion among those around her. Many couldn't understand how she had managed to seduce the emperor. It was a real shock for everyone, as they believed the emperor preferred noblewomen and ladies of the nobility. Rumors began circulating around the palace that the emperor favored women with dirty hair and sloppy clothes. These rumors quickly spread among the people. The emperor was known for his unusual preferences. He seemed to avoid beautiful women, choosing those who were less than ideal in appearance. Rumors about the emperor's preferences spread rapidly. Some condemned his choice, while others were simply perplexed. It became a topic of discussion in the palace. Boutique designer Laurier greeted Ariel and introduced herself. She offered to create the most stylish and fashionable dresses for her, starting with taking her measurements. Ariel was confused and didn't understand why this was necessary, especially so early. She didn't know how to respond to a proposal that seemed completely unnecessary. The emperor said Ariel needed clothes for life in the palace. He insisted that she quickly choose several outfits for different occasions. However, she resisted, declaring that her ready-made outfits were quite sufficient and that she didn't need to waste time on new ones. She was certain she didn't need anything special. The emperor, however, disagreed, and the maid began to talk about finally seeing the rumored girl. This again attracted the attention of everyone present. The designer suggested focusing on selecting designs from brochures. She encouraged Ariel to choose the ones she liked so they could create something in her style. They proposed creating something modern that would suit her taste. Modern dresses were significantly different from those worn in the past. The designer began discussing which colors would suit her look, for example, with Ariel's black hair or golden eyes. She also suggested considering popular colors. Lace had recently become popular, and the designer suggested using it in the design. Suddenly, the emperor mentioned that Ariel liked the color red, surprising everyone. Ariel was surprised by his words. The designer also looked at the emperor with bewilderment, unsure why he was making such a decision for her. Ariel felt even more uncomfortable. Of all the flowers, Ariel preferred hydrangea. When she said this, the emperor smiled, and she felt annoyed, because once again he had managed to learn something about her taste. Ariel was irritated and asked the emperor not to interfere with her choice. She said she didn't want him to decide for her, and asked him to stop pressuring others. He kept thinking she'd choose a dress with red hydrangeas. She was surprised and asked him how he could know her preferences, and he simply smiled. Ariel was shocked to learn he was actually planning to commission a dress of his own design. She was certain the emperor was trying to create an expensive piece of junk. Ariel asked him to stop interfering and leave the matter to the professionals. She was confident they would do everything right without his unnecessary interference. The emperor tried to say something else, but Ariel wouldn't listen. She was determined and said she wouldn't tolerate any objections from him. The maids began to comment on their conversation. They jokingly remarked that it sounded like a dog training command, which made them smile, though not without some confusion. They didn't feel embarrassed, but decided it was best to put such thoughts aside. After all, no one should treat the emperor like some kind of pet. Although it seemed as if Ariel considered him a pet, the emperor didn't mind at all. He simply accepted her attitude toward him, which suited him. Rumors quickly spread among the palace servants and courtiers. Everyone began discussing the emperor and Ariel's strange relationship, considering it something unusual. One of the servants remarked that the emperor really did resemble an obedient puppy, and this did not cause him any objections or embarrassment. Everyone began to suspect that Ariel might be its owner, though no one dared to say so out loud. The idea seemed too outlandish to them. Rumors about the palace continued to spread. Everyone was saying that in this place, the emperor found himself under the control of his mistress, and this surprised everyone. These rumors quickly spread, and people began discussing Ariel's relationship with the emperor. This happened more than once, and the second wave of rumors seemed even louder. Ariel realized this could all drive her crazy. Her attitude toward the emperor became increasingly strange as she treated him like a child. Ansel noticed that her behavior was increasingly reminiscent of a relationship with an animal. Everyone began to perceive her as an illiterate woman, unable to even read. Ariel couldn't understand where such rumors were coming from. She was becoming more and more like a trainer, and it made her think about escaping this place. She began to think about escape. Unsure of how to get out or where to go, she decided the only option was to hide as quickly as possible. She had no money and couldn't go anywhere, but she decided that before escaping, she needed to see the magic circle in the palace to understand how it worked. The emperor was surprised to hear her request. Ariel noted that he knew she couldn't use magic as her power was too weak. Cedric considered this and agreed, noting that her desire to test the magic circle was entirely logical. He offered to show it to her if she was truly interested. Ariel was surprised, but agreed. She wanted to see the magic circle to assess its condition, even knowing she couldn't use it. The emperor agreed and said he had something he wanted to show her. It sounded mysterious, and she couldn't help but feel curious. Ariel didn't understand what was happening. She was confused by how the palace was turning into something like a forest of monsters, and she couldn't figure out where it all came from. She had no idea what was happening in the palace. Her head was filled with questions, and she tried to figure out what this strange place had become her new reality. The emperor immediately noticed the monster's recognition the moment their gazes met. His reaction left no doubt. Not just recognition, but a profound connection, as if the past had come to life in an instant. In the midst of the raging fire, the emperor approached the tree around which the battle was raging. He tried to calm it, speaking carefully as if communicating with an ancient spirit dwelling within the ancient trunk. After everything that happened, they hugged and the monster visibly relaxed. Having taken the core, he shared his magical energy. Now, thanks to their connection to the forest, the idea of appointing them to guard the palace's magical circle seemed especially appropriate. 9. Ariel couldn't understand what this monster saw as so valuable in that guy who kept throwing lightning bolts and meteorites, creating chaos and destruction around him. Although he struck, he clearly wasn't aiming for the monster's core. Almost immediately, he healed the wound as if to demonstrate that his goal wasn't destruction. Gradually, Ariel realized that there was a long-standing friendship between them, which had connected them since childhood. However, it must be acknowledged, they truly succeeded in defending the circle. No one dared approach, for the very thought of it filled everyone with fear. This circle connected to the forest was located south of Arundel, hidden from prying eyes, but important to their magical world. With the circle now here, it became apparent that the Imperial Palace was built on the site of the Old Kingdom, which helped Ariel figure out their current location. However, she still couldn't understand why the circle had ended up in the palace. After all, its coordinates were fixed, meaning transference was simply impossible. This circle was considered an ancient relic once found in a simple farmer's field. Several generations ago, the emperor built a palace near it to study its magical properties. Ariel concluded that this emperor must have been very into magic. He was most likely a wealthy fanatic, willing to do anything for his research. Cedric noted that no one had ever discovered the purpose of this magic. So the circle was abandoned, and he accidentally ended up in the forest where their paths crossed. When he looked at her, Ariel felt a little embarrassed, realizing that he was probably remembering their past. She explained that time flowed differently in the forest. However, despite the passage of millennia, it looked much better than she could have expected. Over these thousands of years, the circle continued to function, as if protected from destruction, remarkably surviving to this day. She was curious about what kind of magic was behind this preservation. She assumed that it was a spell created not by her, but by someone else. The magic apparently belonged to the wizard Akelnar, a colleague at the forest laboratory with whom she had once shared her research space. She wondered if she should ask him what formula he'd used. His spell remained active even after 1,000 years. Cedric added that he had not noticed many of the oddities of the forest before, although now they seemed obvious. The forest was filled with magical anomalies, such as a house that always remained clean with food and comfortable conditions recovering from destruction. Ariel didn't immediately understand what he was talking about, but she became increasingly convinced that the forest really was full of mysteries. The house seemed to be under a spell of status quo. Even Ariel herself never aged, no matter how many years passed. She remained the same as on the day of their first meeting, as if time had stood still for her. However, Cedric was growing up and getting older, which put Ariel in an awkward position because she didn't know what to answer. The magic of the forest seemed to hold back time, and it was clearly connected to a powerful sorceress named Ashildr. Despite her lack of magical powers, Ariel was highly skilled in magic and spells, causing Cedric to doubt her true identity. There were times when he suspected that Ariel was Ashildr, although she herself never confirmed it. Since then, he has been searching for information about the mage Akelnar, who, as it turns out, was active around the same time as Ashildr. Akelnar left behind only a few materials, but they were enough for Cedric to understand the differences between the two archmages' legacies. However, Akelnar's magic was also connected to the forest, which raised even more questions. Ariel, confused, asked if this was really true, since her companion was a man named Daniel. Daniel was the owner of the shirt that Cedric found, adding a new mystery to his investigation. He began to suspect that Akelnar and Daniel might be the same person, which shocked Ariel. It became clear to her that he had already unraveled her secrets. Her connection with Ashildr and Daniel, now he waited for her reaction. To avoid being revealed, the girl decided to pretend, but Cedric switched to something else. He claimed that Ashildr and Akelnar might have been lovers. When he asked her opinion, Ariel dismissed it, calling his theory madness and a huge mistake. She couldn't understand how rumors could distort the facts so much. This version of events seemed absurd to her. In fact, Akelnar, like Daniel, was her brother, which made the rumors even more ridiculous. Ariel was praying in the temple when she suddenly felt something strange, as if an ominous energy was gathering around her. It was a prophecy. She sensed an ominous aura hanging over the imperial palace. Few could believe that the cold and distant emperor would ever communicate with a woman, but rumors grew. At the training ground, they were discussing ridiculous stories about how this woman would become an empress. Ariel met Lady Violet, a saint who heard the voice of God and was a candidate to become empress. Lady Violet was shocked by the emperor's decision to choose someone else, realizing that the palace had begun to change. Daniel Akelnar Lauderdale Arundel was known not only as Prince Arundel, but also as a powerful archmage. He was the eldest of his family, 2 years older than his sister. They looked like ordinary brother and sister. The only thing that set them apart was their incredible genius in magic. They both reached the pinnacle of mastery and became archmages whose abilities astounded even the most experienced sorcerers. The brother and sister devoted all their free time to magical amusements, playing with fire and water. Daniel often used hellfire, while his sister preferred to summon snowstorms. Their games resembled duels between two great mages competing in the skill and power of their spells. However, these games often turned into something more than just a display of skill. Despite their affection for each other, the sister was irritated by her brother's actions. She often gave in to her emotions, and then resorted to not only magical attacks, but also physical ones. Often these arguments ended in a fight, and one day the she-bear, as she was sometimes called, attacked Daniel again. He couldn't understand what irritated her so much, or why she kept pulling his hair. The girl screamed, accusing her brother of stupidity, since in her opinion, using the hellfire of the 6 circles was not just a mistake, but outright madness. Their arguments quickly escalated into full-blown fistfights until someone intervened to break them up and end yet another conflict. Typically, it was their sister Serenial Ashella, Elsbeth Arundel, the kingdom's crown princess. She would sternly question why two magically gifted people were constantly arguing over their powers. Serenial didn't just intervene, she enforced order. She punished them by sending them to prison for 3 days, giving the brother and sister a chance to acknowledge their mistakes and reflect on their behavior. Despite their extraordinary abilities, their arguments seemed quite mundane. The older sister acted as peacemaker, and their family had a touch of the mundane, mingled with magic. But in the future, these moments would remain just memories. She would never see them again. The emperor looked at her silently, not revealing his thoughts. He then decided to find out who Akelnar and Ashildr were to each other. This question troubled him, and he wanted to know the truth. When Ariel heard his words, she exclaimed that she knew nothing about it. She suggested he look for answers in the notes, trying to steer the conversation away from the subject. She was irritated by the emperor's continued pestering of her with questions. Ariel begged him to stop, but she knew he wouldn't back down that easily. She began to realize that the situation was becoming dangerous for her. The emperor had clearly noticed something, and it could lead to undesirable consequences. In the forest, where she found herself with a man named Daniel, she realized the emperor had guessed the truth. Daniel and Akelnar were apparently one and the same. Moreover, he could reveal her secret, that she was Ashildr. The thought terrified her, because she didn't want anyone to know. 1,000 years passed, and Ariel became someone who lived for centuries. Despite this, she did not want to be considered an old woman. Although it seemed like a small thing, it was important to her. Her past was too painful, and she couldn't stay where it might come to light. Ariel decided the best course of action was to leave the imperial palace and return to the forest. She felt safer there, knowing that the familiar environment protected her from danger. However, Ariel understood that leaving the palace would not be easy. The emperor was unlikely to agree to let her go without objections, and might even try to prevent her departure. She began to consider how to circumvent his plans and avoid unnecessary conflict. After weighing all her options, Ariel decided to try to resolve the situation verbally. She believed that open communication could ease the tension. Perhaps if she explained her intentions, the emperor would stop putting up obstacles. But when Ariel opened the door, she unexpectedly found the emperor standing right in front of her. He was standing there as if waiting for her to emerge. His voice was calm, but her quicker-than-expected reaction clearly surprised him. Ariel was startled, uncomfortable under his intense gaze. She exclaimed that he was being too persistent, hinting at his stubbornness. It seemed incredible to her that he had stood patiently outside the door this entire time. The emperor, without losing his composure, replied that he was waiting for her to calm down and be ready to talk. Hearing this, Ariel bluntly stated that she had decided to return to the forest, not wishing to remain dangerously close to the palace. She also added that she had no intention of blocking the magic circle that would allow the emperor to visit the forest at any time. Thus, she made it clear that she had no plans to hinder his possible visits. The emperor considered her words. He noted that he didn't understand her desire to return to the forest as Ariel's home, once her refuge was now gone. His words sounded confident, as if he knew something for certain. Ariel was surprised to hear this statement. She couldn't believe that her home protected by a restoration spell had vanished. She thought it was simply impossible, as the house's defenses were impenetrable. The emperor explained that the house had been dismantled, down to the last particle, to prevent its restoration. He stated this with confidence, as if he had personally overseen this complex process. Afterwards, he brought Ariel's belongings, including unique relics. These finds delighted the mages, who couldn't hide their interest in the ancient artifacts. Ariel was shocked. She realized her belongings had been looted, and this filled her with deep indignation. She felt betrayed and humiliated, seeing her belongings in the wrong hands. Outraged Ariel began shouting that such actions were unnecessary and unacceptable. She emphasized that these things were part of her life, and she had no intention of parting with them. But among the objects, something unusual caught her eye. It was such a strange discovery that Ariel momentarily forgot her anger, focusing on what lay before her. Her gaze fell on the diary, which contained personal entries. Ariel realized that the meaning of some of the entries could be misinterpreted, and this forced her to change her behavior. She heard the men rejoice at the discovery. They began discussing the notes, trying to make sense of the familiar words written in an ancient language as if they were important texts. Ariel felt a surge of alarm as she discerned the names Akelnar and Ashildr among the words. She realized that mentioning these names could lead to undesirable conclusions. The men assumed the diary belonged to two archmages and hoped the entries would reveal important details about their relationship. Their interest in the discovery only intensified. The name Akelnar was repeated especially frequently, leading them to suspect that the diary was a journal recording his accomplishments. They were already forming hypotheses based on what they had read. Ariel knew their assumptions were wrong. It was her personal diary, and she couldn't let them know the true contents. A feeling of helplessness washed over her. It was excruciating to see her personal notes become the subject of other people's discussions. She couldn't imagine how to stop it and get her diary back. The Emperor, noticing Ariel's reaction, was intrigued. He hadn't expected the notes to be so important, and decided to find out why they had so disturbed her. Coming closer, he expressed his opinion that Akelnar and Ashildr were a couple. This strengthened his confidence in the correctness of his assumptions. Ariel was shocked, but to avoid revealing the real truth, she evasively admitted that she hadn't been attracted to Akelnar. This answer didn't come easy to her. The Emperor, misinterpreting her words, suggested discussing the diary's contents in more detail. He was determined to find out all the details and clarify their relationship. He pointed to a word next to Akelnar's name, guessing it meant beloved. This caused a stir among those present, heightening their interest. In fact, the word was a curse word used by Ariel to call him a bastard. Her diary contained angry entries reflecting her feelings during this period. Ariel felt ashamed, realizing that they had found notes she'd made when she was 5 years old. It was truly humiliating as her childhood emotions were on public display. The Emperor spoke of Akelnar again and asked why the diary was so important to Ariel. He also tried to find out what connection she had with Ashildr. Ariel could barely speak, but she still tried to convince him he was wrong. She tried not to show her true emotions. Then she admitted that she was Ashildr. The Emperor wasn't surprised. He was simply waiting for her to confirm it herself to solidify his suspicions. For the Emperor, this confession was of fundamental importance. He wanted to hear the truth from her lips to confirm his conclusions and finally confirm his suspicions. The man was indeed right, and the girl wasted no time in asking him to return all her belongings that had been taken from the house in the forest. This was important to her, and she hoped he would be able to fulfill her request. However, the man noted that, judging by the wizard's behavior, they were unlikely to be willing to part with the items. It seemed to him that what they had found was so valuable that they simply couldn't give it up. Ariel was shocked to hear this. She couldn't believe that even the Emperor didn't have enough power to command mages. It undermined her preconceptions of his strength. Cedric confidently declared that he did indeed have the authority. He ordered Ansel to immediately bring Ariel's diary, demonstrating his readiness to act. He also ordered that the mages be told that if they protested, they should move everything found in the forest to the palace warehouse. This was supposed to be a convincing argument for them. The man reasoned that the wizards, unwilling to lose everything at once, would prefer to hand over only one diary. This seemed obvious and entirely logical to him, but he couldn't help but wonder, was the diary's contents really that important? This curiosity haunted him. Ariel, noticing his reverie, called out to the man sharply. She asked him to stop explaining that the diary couldn't be read as it could decipher Arendel's writing. Despite her insistence, the Emperor had no intention of returning the diary. His actions clearly indicated that his intentions were completely at odds with her expectations. Ariel was starting to lose her composure. Her voice, usually gentle, grew louder and sharper, reflecting her growing irritation. It seemed absurd to her that he was acting as if he was deliberately trying to irritate her. She made it clear that the diary must be returned immediately. Ariel warned him firmly. If he allowed himself to read it, she would leave the palace without hesitation and return to the forest. The Emperor, however, remained calm. He smiled faintly and remarked with a hint of irony that she spoke of returning to the forest so casually, as if it required no effort or regret. He reminded her that all this time he'd been holding back for her sake. 10 long years had passed since she'd left, and the pain hadn't faded. Every mention of it was excruciating, but he believed it was worth it to endure for her sake. Then, many years ago, despairing over the loss of the magic circle's connection to the forest, he made a risky decision. Despite all the dangers, he set out into the forest himself. It was an attempt to reclaim what had been lost, though he knew he might face insurmountable obstacles. He searched for Ariel, driven not only by the desire to bring her back, but also by a firm determination to destroy anyone who would aid her. If he encountered any of her supporters, he would destroy them all without hesitation, certain that it was the only way to solve the problem. For the Emperor, things that didn't belong to him weren't worth existing. Destroying them was the right thing to do. This conviction became ingrained in him, and he believed it was better to erase everything completely. This approach was obvious to him. Disappeared objects leave neither memories nor bitterness. They simply vanish, freeing the mind and heart from unnecessary torment. He was certain it was easier to live this way, avoiding unnecessary emotions and regrets about the past. These thoughts had once completely consumed his mind, but even now, despite everything they'd been through, Ariel couldn't understand what was happening between them. Suddenly, the Emperor, as if he hadn't expected it, admitted that the thought of Ariel's disappearance from this world now caused him a strange feeling of rejection. This was precisely what motivated him to keep her close. He wanted to lock her away, so she could never leave again. His words rang not only with determination, but also with genuine need. The Emperor had said bluntly that he wanted Ariel to breathe only in his presence, to be completely dependent on him. His words sounded like a declaration of dominion, and it was both frightening and alarming. Moreover, he dreamed of hiding her somewhere far from everyone, in a place where only he could see her, where no one else could claim her attention or love. He added that she also loved living near him, although she denied it. He also asked her not to anger him, as if he wanted to preserve the delicate balance that connected them. In his opinion, after so much patience, he deserved not only understanding, but also a reward. After all this time, he had been holding back his feelings, trying not to harm her. Ariel replied that it was just a diary not worth the attention. However, Cedric merely chuckled. According to him, that's precisely what made it all the more important and interesting. She vehemently warned him that she would be extremely angry if he dared read the diary. Ariel insisted that the only correct course of action was to destroy it immediately. The Emperor seemed to agree, but noted that the wizards would likely be upset. They'd gone to so much trouble to retrieve the diary, and now it would simply disappear. Ariel praised him for destroying the diary, but before she could relax, he asked an unexpected question. The Emperor inquired about her relationship with Ashildr and Akelnar. His open suggestion that they might have been romantically involved infuriated Ariel. She hastened to reassure him that they were just brother and sister to her. Surprised by this answer, he sarcastically remarked that in that case she'd killed her own brother. His words were harsh and brought back painful memories. He added that conflicts between relatives were common, but only now did he begin to understand how she had achieved greatness in magic. He then revealed that Ashildr was still alive, finally confirming that he was indeed her brother. Ariel was his sister, not his lover. However, this revelation brought a strange expression to his face that puzzled her. She couldn't quite figure out what was behind his meaningful gaze. It left her completely confused and worried. The Emperor explained that he was almost certain that Ariel was Ashildr, but the constant mention of the Archmage irritated him, leaving him no peace. He stated outright that if they had truly been a couple, he would have destroyed their union, and if Ashildr had died, he would have resurrected him only to kill him again. Ariel considered his words cruel and begged him to stop, but he assured her that since Ashildr was her brother, he would spare him. Despite this, he couldn't understand why she hid her true greatness as the great sorceress Ashildris. Ariel merely remarked that age might be the reason, but he clarified with a slight grin that she was only 1,000 years old. She explained that her apparent age had stopped at 24. She saw no reason for this to conceal her identity. Ariel was proud of her accomplishments. Her magic circle continued to benefit the world, which filled her with a deep sense of satisfaction. However, among all her accomplishments, there remained one act that she hid for a long time and which almost no one knew about. Intrigued, the Emperor asked what exactly she had done and why he considered it so significant. Ariel honestly admitted that 1,000 years ago the world was destroyed. Many people died in this cataclysm, and she considered herself to be responsible. She called herself a sinner, realizing that her actions had caused irreparable damage to the world. 1,000 years ago, every corner of the world was embroiled in fierce battles. The world became a battlefield. Kelsion, the great and powerful, condemned the magical kingdom of Arundel for its alliance with the forces of darkness, claiming they had sold their souls to the devil for magical power. The alliance between Kelsion and the Republic of Credel brought only destruction and fear to the lands of Arundel darkness, rising from the depths of evil, spread eclipsing the light of magic and peace, bringing chaos to the once thriving kingdom. The Holy Empire of Kelsion and the Republic of Credel joined forces to deal a powerful blow to Arundel. The alliance of two such powerful nations was an ominous sign for the magical kingdom, which suddenly found itself threatened with total annihilation. Serenial, observing the scale and size of the Empire's forces, couldn't hide her shock. It seemed to her that the unification of such a vast number of troops was an act of terrifying madness and a testament to the lengths they were willing to go to achieve victory. The fanatics who served the god seemed to have completely lost their minds. Their faith and devotion drove them to extreme measures. Arundel, renowned for its magic, seemed incapable of dealing with this threat, and the future of the kingdom was in doubt. To confront the enemy, Arundel summoned the kingdom's finest mages. Urgent training began for high-level wizards, capable of wielding powerful long-range magic. This was the only chance for salvation in such a dire situation. Along with other wizards, members of the royal family, including Daniel, also came to the kingdom's defense. As the greatest mages of their time, they represented Arundel's last hope in this unequal battle. Using spells more powerful than anyone could have imagined, they triumphed over the kingdom's enemies. Their magic was so powerful that it seemed irresistible, and one by one, their enemies fell under its onslaught. The war escalated at an incredible rate, devastating everything in its path. Ariel, unable to bear the pain of loss, one day stepped onto the battlefield. The sight of the destruction all around her brought her to her knees. Before her eyes was a scene of complete devastation. Nothing remained. No houses, no people, no hope. Everything she loved was destroyed. Her mother, father, sister, and brother, everyone dear to her, were dead. This realization fell upon her with unbearable weight, and her soul was overwhelmed by inexpressible grief. Ultimately, the world was utterly destroyed. The Empire, the Republic, and even Arundel all fell in this terrible war, leaving behind only scorched lands and smoldering ruins. Every living thing perished, as if consumed by the unquenchable flames of war. But Ariel couldn't believe it had to be this way. She felt it was all wrong. Her mind couldn't comprehend why everything had happened this way. Why had everyone left her alone? Despair overwhelmed her, and she wept bitterly like a child who had lost everything. Ariel couldn't find an explanation for what was happening. Why had fate been so cruel to her? Why did she have to witness such horror? These questions tormented her soul. She blamed herself for what had happened, all the troubles, destruction, and loss. It all seemed to her to be due to her actions. In despair, she screamed, blaming herself. Left completely alone, Ariel sank into grief. But a few days later, she suddenly saw a strange gate before her, glowing with a mysterious light. It was the Gate of Change. Only after losing everything did she realize that everything that had happened was part of someone's elaborate ruse. Forces from another dimension were using her and her world to achieve their own ends. Ariel realized that the god Kelsion, worshipped by the fanatics, existed in another dimension. His influence was spreading to her world, wreaking havoc. She also realized that opening the gate had played into their hands. This thought sent a surge of rage through her, and she felt a burning hatred for those who had so cruelly used her. Mustering her willpower, she vowed to destroy all means of these forces' interference in her world. Ariel decided to block not only the gates, but also any means of entry. With incredible effort, she sealed the gates of change. The connection between dimensions was severed, and the path to beings from another world was forever closed. Sealing the gates drained her of all her magical powers. Exhausted, she spent several days in the forest, struggling to overcome her loneliness. The forest became her refuge. This time was a trial for her, but she persevered, managing to block the passage of alien dimensions into her native lands. Her persistence and fortitude allowed her to endure everything despite the pain and suffering. Her desire to protect the world and seek revenge became her driving force. Now, after some time, she could admit one thing. Her actions had led to disaster. Ariel felt guilty for the destruction of the world. She told Cedric that she was a sinner because it was her fault the world had been destroyed. Now she wanted to atone for her guilt by going into the forest. Ariel intended to remain in the forest, pray for the salvation of the world, and ask for forgiveness from everyone she had unwittingly betrayed. She decided to devote herself to prayer, wishing for this world to regain peace and prosperity. Her faith in redemption was boundless. The Emperor, struck by her words, asked again, does she really consider herself guilty of the destruction of the world, and because of this wants to go into the forest? He sighed, trying to understand her motivation. Ariel seemed mysterious to him, but he respected her choice. Cedric admitted he didn't want to let her leave the palace, but he knew it was inevitable. He could only accept her decision. He instructed his advisor Ansel to prepare everything necessary for her departure. However, he still had his own plans for her farewell. Cedric said he wanted to show her something special before she left the palace. Ariel, however, couldn't understand what exactly he was talking about. He wanted her to see the world beyond the palace, the lands she thought were destroyed. This was his way of opening her eyes. When Ariel, still confused, found herself in the carriage, she wasn't quite sure where she was being taken. Everything that was happening seemed unexpected to her. Cedric assured her they were heading somewhere good. She, however, seemed suspicious, which made him smile. She noted with irritation that she had literally been kidnapped. But at that moment, her attention was drawn to the astonishing view outside the carriage window. Stunning views opened up before her eyes. She was amazed by the beauty of the road, the strength of the buildings, and the bustle of the streets. Everything around spoke of prosperity. The roads were well maintained. The buildings looked magnificent, and the streets were alive with life. Every part of the city, wherever she looked, was in good condition. Ariel realized that the world had changed greatly. These changes took her completely by surprise. She couldn't believe that everything looked exactly like this. When the carriage stopped, she realized their journey had come to an end. Something important awaited her. The operator, without turning around, ordered the girl to follow him. His words were decisive and commanding, leaving no doubt about the need to obey. The girl, slightly embarrassed by what was happening, began to carefully exit the carriage. Before her loomed a majestic building, its architecture impressive. Tall columns, glittering windows, and exquisite facade. Details spoke of the wealth and power that resided here. The girl paused for a moment, amazed by the view. The Emperor's visit was a great honor for the locals, and they wanted to show their respect. To show them their best, they escorted the guests to the most luxurious upper room. This care and attention to detail demonstrated the importance of the moment for everyone present. Ariel could hardly hide her surprise as she entered the hotel. She was shocked that the Emperor had chosen to show her this particular place. She had expected something different, but she hadn't expected his destination to be the hotel. The Emperor, noticing her confusion, explained his choice. He explained that the upper floors offered the most breathtaking views of the city. It was here, in his opinion, that one could truly see the true beauty of this world. The long-awaited moment had arrived. The Emperor confidently declared that the time had come. Now everything he had wanted to show Ariel would be revealed. He directed her toward the panoramic windows from which the entire city could be seen. The Emperor turned enthusiastically to Ariel, inviting her to see the majestic city. His pride in this place was palpable. He wanted her to share his admiration. The girl felt confused. She couldn't understand anything until her gaze fell on a strange magic circle glowing nearby. It was an unusual and mesmerizing sight that filled her with great surprise. Her shock intensified when she saw a vehicle in the sky, hovering above the ground. It wasn't a carriage, a bird, or a dragon. A machine flying through the air seemed utterly impossible to her. The Emperor explained that what lay before her was an airship, one of the greatest achievements of their time. These devices were regularly used for supply deliveries and became a symbol of progress and technology. He also explained that the creation of airships only recently became possible after extensive research. Scientists managed to develop a new fuel capable of keeping them aloft, marking a true breakthrough in engineering. The emperor invited Ariel to take a closer look at the world around her. He explained that many similar airships and other technologies had been created. All this was proof that the world continued to evolve. He resolutely declared that the world was much larger and stronger than she believed. Despite hardships and wars, it continued to recover, demonstrating remarkable resilience and beauty. The magical circles activating everywhere served as vivid proof of this development. The emperor compared them to a pulse, animating a world that had reached unprecedented heights in its progress. Ariel paused. She realized that no memory of her past world could compare to this beauty. The city was magnificent, and she felt like this was a new beginning. Looking at the panorama that opened up, she noticed that the country she found herself in must have some poetic and majestic name. This world evoked in her a sense of respect and awe. The emperor proudly announced that this country was called the Elysium Empire. It was created through the union of science and technology, making it unique and powerful. Although the combination of science, magic, and technology sounded unusual, Ariel felt she'd heard the motto somewhere before. It reminded her of something from her past, awakening long-forgotten memories. Meanwhile, news of the impending danger alarmed the residents. Crowgill was approaching, and mages were dispatched to the canyon to block his path. This was a crucial strategic decision. The emperor mentioned that fire magic could play a key role. He also asked if Ariel had heard of this. Her knowledge could be useful in the current situation. Rumors said that an alliance of different races, humans, elves, and dwarves, was forming in the south. They sought to unite to resist the destruction wrought by magic and war. This union, despite the strange combination of magic and technology, was reminiscent of old times. However, the idea of scientific progress without magic seemed unusual and new. The emperor explained that the unification of the different races pursued a single goal: protecting the world from destruction by magic and war. After the fighting ended, he planned to teach his allies magic, emphasizing that it could be used not only for attack, but also for creation. Ariel noticed that the world around her truly seemed to be connected to magic. She observed that the emperor was applying principles of science and technology, integrating them with magic, achieving astonishing results. She dreamed of a swift end to the war. For Ariel, this became her greatest desire, for only peace could allow this beautiful world to continue to develop without loss and destruction. Her brother, however, had a different opinion. He believed that, despite dreams of peace, they needed to focus on the present, as current events required their full attention and effort. As the world was engulfed in war, a small spark of hope emerged, a small union emerging amidst chaos. This union became a symbol of how even in the darkest times, people strive for unity and order. Over time, these small steps gave birth to a great empire. Ariel realized that even in a world where much had been destroyed, they had been able to survive and transform the ruins into a new, prosperous nation. She thought how fortunate she was to have stopped in time in the past. Her actions back then had played a crucial role, and now she could observe this world as it continued to grow and develop. Sealing the gates of change was the key decision that prevented interference from other worlds. Thanks to this, the world was able to preserve its uniqueness and develop along its own path. Ariel's 1,000 years dedicated to protecting the gates were not in vain. These efforts helped create a wondrous world filled with beauty, life, and progress. Although it might have seemed futile on her part, the results exceeded all expectations. Ariel marveled at how far magic and technology had come, and was glad that this world continued to exist. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the true beauty of this world. Everything she saw around her filled her with pride and touched her deeply. The emperor, seeing her tears, approached her gently, took her face, and began wiping away the drops streaming down her cheeks. His gesture expressed genuine concern and understanding of her feelings. He told her that he was the master of this magnificent world and offered to stay by his side. Together, they could watch it grow and prosper. The emperor confessed that he wanted to look into the future with her. He wanted her to share his joy in watching the development of the world of which he was so proud. Taking a step forward, Cedric tenderly kissed her hand and offered to become his empress. His voice was soft, but it conveyed deep sincerity and determination. Ariel, confused by his proposal, quickly pulled her hand away. She explained that they couldn't be together. Their worlds and times were too different for them to connect in the future. She explained that time flows differently for her and her forest. What seems like centuries to them for her flies by in a matter of days. This makes their future together impossible. However, Ariel admitted that if she stayed here for a while, nothing bad would happen to the gate. She wanted to admire this wondrous world that had so enchanted her for a little while longer. She remembered that perhaps she should stay here for a while, without marrying Cedric. She wanted to understand this world better before making such serious decisions. But life in the palace proved boring. Ariel realized she simply had nothing to do within these walls. Waiting and loneliness became her constant companions. While Cedric was busy with imperial affairs, she had no one to talk to or have fun with. She understood that his work was important, but she still felt abandoned. It was difficult for her to move around alone, as the terrain was unfamiliar, and she didn't speak the language. Ariel thought that perhaps she should have forgiven past grievances, as without support, things were becoming even more difficult. Without her, everything seemed empty and lifeless. It seemed like this silence and loneliness would continue until they found her a personal maid who could help her settle in. Her only entertainment was watching people pass by. However, even this couldn't fill her days, as there were very few people here, and their bustle seemed monotonous. One day, she noticed people she hadn't seen before. Their clothes were very different from the usual attire of servants and maids, which immediately caught her attention. As she turned, her gaze fell upon a strikingly beautiful girl. She radiated kindness and warm energy, which immediately endeared her to Ariel. The stranger's gaze was so sincere and friendly that Ariel felt her heart warm a little. The girl was like a shining light in this dull and lonely palace. The woman told the saint that before her stood the very person the emperor had personally brought. She spoke with a hint of excitement, as if awaiting the saint's reaction to such a significant event. The saint decided to take a less crowded path, hoping to avoid the large crowds. However, unexpectedly, encountering this woman, she felt an intrigue and decided to find out who she was. The woman, however, believed that Miss Violet should be offended by such a thing. She couldn't understand why the emperor had ordered her to choose the wedding date and not others. Violet calmly explained that this was due to her status as a cleric representing the temple. The emperor trusted her judgment. However, the woman countered that she herself had been a candidate for the role of empress, and Her Majesty's decision was clearly too much. Violet advised her to be careful with her words, reminding her that the palace was full of rumors. To avoid further encounters with people, they decided to quicken their pace and head straight for the temple. This seemed the best solution in the current situation. The inspector was already on his way, as had been announced in advance. The anticipation of his arrival caused noticeable tension among everyone. Be that as it may, the question remained open. When the saint approached them, she showed interest, asking what had happened. Upon seeing Miss Violet, everyone present couldn't contain their emotions. Everyone began shouting over each other, trying to get her attention. They desperately tried to explain that some traces had been found in the alley that could be of great importance. Violet, approaching the place, began to think that this could be a ritual associated with murder. She was alarmed by the fact that this wasn't the first time this had happened. Something similar had happened just a few days ago. She couldn't believe something like this was possible in the imperial capital. She concluded that this was the work of a cult. The saint, hearing of this, was stunned and unsure what to do. She recalled that she had recently received a revelation from God that danger was approaching the imperial palace. The catastrophe of the past could be repeated in a new guise. This caused everyone to discuss rumors that a new mistress of the emperor had recently appeared in the palace. Although it was hard to believe, the atmosphere around could not be described as anything other than ominous. The saint's premonition grew worse. One of the women approached her, inquiring what exactly God had said about the coming catastrophe. The woman assumed that the one for whom the emperor had exchanged Miss Violet, the mysterious witch from the eastern forest, was to blame for everything. The time had come for the truth to be revealed. A girl of suspicious origin was near the emperor, and this could not help but raise questions. Everyone continued to loudly discuss the situation, despite the saints' warnings to be careful in their statements. Rumors of the cult's sacrificial rituals spread more and more and became more frightening. These events were clearly not isolated. It's clear that similar events will happen again. People began to become increasingly anxious, and soon the accumulated doubts could lead to a sharp explosion of emotions. At this point, everything could get out of control, so it was important to wait. All that remained was to wait for the moment when everything would reveal itself in order to avoid premature actions. The Marquisate of Kelton was also involved. The topic of the girl chosen for the emperor was a constant thorn in her side. Priscilla believed the empire was heading for ruin, and now she understood why Felix was a more worthy contender for the throne. Marchioness Priscilla, St. Violet's mother, was furious. The emperor had brought an unknown woman to the palace and was planning to marry her. Violet entered the palace and was forced to listen to all sorts of meaningless conversations, which only increased the tension. The man warned her that even within the walls of their luxurious mansion, she shouldn't feel safe. He pointed out that they could be followed and any careless word or action could be used against them. However, despite the warning, the woman couldn't contain her rage. She was especially infuriated by the fact that her daughter had still not returned, leaving her in limbo. Anger consumed her thoughts, making it difficult to concentrate. She considered it humiliating and absurd that the Empress's title could be so easily challenged. The man, on the other hand, pointed out that all was not lost, and with the right actions, the situation could be rectified. Priscilla considered his words. Trying to find a way out, she asked him if he had any new information or a plan that could help her regain control of the situation. The man explained that the girl they were dealing with couldn't read or write. He suggested exploiting this weakness to turn the situation to their advantage. To implement his plan, he had already begun searching for a suitable servant. She was to not only perform daily duties, but also carry out special assignments necessary for their plan. It was soon decided to introduce their own person into the situation. The maid was surprised to learn that the girl had unexpectedly applied for the position, which opened up new opportunities for maneuver. The vacancy did indeed look tempting. Its conditions included not only a high salary, but also additional bonuses for meeting specific requirements, which attracted many applicants. The girl, eager to earn as much as possible, was determined to try her luck. Her desire to succeed, despite all obstacles, gave her courage. With her pink hair commanding attention and a determined expression on her face, she walked straight towards the Lord Chamberlain, ready to declare her intentions. The Chief Chamberlain, noticing her appearance, turned, and with a keen gaze assessed her appearance, trying to understand with whom he was dealing. The girl confidently announced that she wanted to become the honored guest's personal maid. Her announcement clearly piqued his interest, making him question her motives. Thus began her work. From now on, her primary responsibility became serving Miss Rachel Bourbon, a role destined to become an important milestone in her life. She introduced herself as the third daughter of the Barony of Bourbon. She sincerely expressed her joy at receiving her new position and her readiness to overcome any challenges. Ariel was surprised to learn the girl was half-elf. This explained her unusual appearance, which immediately attracted everyone's attention. Ariel pondered what it meant to be half-elf. She wondered how it had affected her destiny, as elves had always prided themselves on their pure blood. Due to her mixed heritage, the girl had weak energy. However, this did not prevent her from performing her duties with noticeable diligence and thoroughness. Despite her modesty, the girl promised to be a reliable and attentive assistant. She was ready to carry out any task required by Lady Ariel. She assured the lady that she was ready to respond to requests at any time and support her in any endeavors, demonstrating sincere devotion. Ariel briefly considered whether she really needed anything from her new assistant. She was consumed with thoughts about how best to exploit the situation. At this point, the maid brought a refreshing drink. This attentiveness surprised and pleased Ariel, leaving her with a good impression of the new servant. Feeling thirsty, Ariel was pleasantly surprised by how quickly the girl guessed her needs, even before she realized them herself. The girl's attention to detail was admirable. Ariel knew such care had been unforeseen, but it clearly deserved her trust. Ariel slowly opened her eyes, feeling a pleasant relaxation. She had slept soundly, finally getting enough rest after long days of stress. The thick curtains blocked out the bright light, helping her prolong the morning calm. The maid was already nearby, as if she had sensed her mistress's awakening in advance. She brought a basin of water so Ariel could refresh herself. Her actions were precise and habitual, as if she anticipated her mistress's wishes. Ariel jumped in surprise when she heard the maid's voice. She offered to wash herself, which unwittingly startled her mistress, who hadn't expected to see her so close. Ariel wondered if this behavior could be called a premonition. More likely, the maid had simply been watching her closely, for the past hour, studying her every movement and gesture. The maid's gaze pierced her soul, yet remained completely dispassionate. Ariel couldn't understand where this girl got such cold confidence. The constant feeling of being watched filled her with a strange sense of unease. Even when she was right there, the maid managed to remain unnoticed. This was alarming and made her wonder how she could escape such watchful attention. Ariel felt a slight discomfort from the endless scrutiny. She began to wonder if there was a way to escape the intense gaze that seemed to follow her everywhere. To distract herself, Ariel decided to go to the Imperial Library. She thought she could safely hide there from the maid's eyes. In fact, her goal was simple. She wanted to find something interesting to read. However, the maid's surprise betrayed her thoughts. After all, her mistress didn't know the letters. Ariel hoped to be alone in the library. She wanted to take her time exploring, enjoying the privacy and unobtrusiveness. The maid, suspecting her mistress had a specific request, offered to fetch the book herself. But Ariel declined, citing the pictures as her only choice as she couldn't read. In fact, she wished Rachel wouldn't follow her. The library seemed like the perfect place to escape her constant presence. Rachel didn't object, merely nodded in response. Ariel, taking advantage of her silence, quickly left, grateful for her brief release. In the library, she dreamed of finding something light. Perhaps children's books with large letters and simple illustrations. This would help her learn the letters, mastering writing step by step. Ariel decided that even at her level, this was entirely possible. She believed that with a little patience, she would eventually learn to read like the locals. Just a few days ago, Ariel had firmly decided to adapt to the palace. Studying had become an important part of her plan, and she had set a goal for herself. To adapt to her new surroundings, she needed to learn to write. She understood that the Emperor should acknowledge and support this. However, Cedric unexpectedly denied her request. His categoricalness puzzled Ariel, who saw nothing dangerous in it. She reminded him that she had once taught him Arundel writing when he was still a child. Now, in her opinion, it was his turn to help her. The Emperor listened to her, but did not change his mind. He noted that he was not yet sure she would stay here for long. His anxiety stemmed from the fact that Ariel, having learned to write, could easily escape. This disturbed him and caused him internal conflict. Cedric seemed to be struggling with himself. His face reflected anxiety and deep inner pain, as if from an old unhealed wound. Ariel began to suspect that his past, where he had been rejected, still tormented him. Her thoughts became increasingly disturbing. She thought he'd long since forgotten the insults and hadn't imagined he could be so vulnerable. Now his condition evoked compassion in her. Moreover, she noticed that he wasn't trying to isolate her completely. His words about a personal maid gave her some freedom. He promised that if she had a maid, she would be free to roam the palace, even allowing her to visit the library. Ariel hoped Cedric hadn't banned her from the library. If so, she'd be able to study writing in peace. She decided that learning would be her personal initiative. She just needed to start small, and over time she would master all the intricacies. At first, she learned simple words like rabbit. Each new symbol was a struggle, but the results brought her joy. She also learned how to write dog. Ariel was confident that by gradually memorizing the letters, she would master the general principle. Her studies were interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Someone approached and caught her attention, breaking her immersion in the text. The girl was greeted by a child with a sweet smile, and for a moment, she was confused, unsure where this charming creature had come from. The boy looked so friendly that she couldn't help but feel a warmth. The child reported that his teacher had told him to be sure to ask the dear guest a question. He spoke with such enthusiasm that it was clear this matter was extremely important to him. The boy was delightfully charming. In his wizard-like robes, he resembled a young mage. Judging by his age, Ariel guessed he was probably just beginning his training. Ariel decided to clarify the question. She leaned slightly toward the boy to show her attention, expecting to hear something curious. The young student explained that the teacher wanted to ask her about the book, written by Archmage Ashildr, which His Majesty had brought to the palace. The boy's voice was filled with obvious admiration. Ariel realized they were talking about the book that had sparked the recent unrest. Her words surprised her, and the boy, noticing her reaction, responded with surprise and asked if he had understood correctly. The girl stood up and explained firmly that the book had been destroyed and no longer existed. She said bluntly that it had been burned and no longer existed. Hearing this, the boy was completely confused. He looked stunned and continued to insist that such a thing was simply impossible, as if hoping it was a mistake. Ariel calmly replied that it was possible since the book had originally belonged to her. She then gently suggested that the boy return to the teacher so as not to waste any more time. However, she suddenly stopped him, noticing something in the lining of his robe. It turned out to be a magic circle, which she found particularly intriguing. Ariel knew that such circles were activated by transforming magical points into a single system, but Sidi's method seemed to differ from her own. She noted that special objects or scrolls were often required to activate magic. However, this was the first time she encountered a magic circle engraved on the fabric of clothing. Intrigued, she asked the boy if she could examine his robe more closely. He readily agreed, explaining that the magic circle helped regulate the wearer's temperature. Ariel noticed an unusual solution. The circle was linked to the owner's magical power, allowing him to independently control the process. But she warned that using such a circle requires a significant expenditure of mana, and advised against abusing it so as not to deplete one's resources. The boy said that he only uses the circle in extreme cold or heat, as it is not fully drawn, which requires more force to work. Because the circle was incomplete, maintaining stable operation was expensive. A large amount of magical energy had to be channeled to ensure comfort. Ariel explained the entire process to him, adding that she could complete the circle. The boy didn't understand a word of her words, but soon saw the result. After completing the circle, energy consumption was minimal, and it only needed to be activated once. The boy was delighted with this simple yet effective improvement. Even with his meager mana reserves, the temperature remained stable, and he couldn't hide his joy. It seemed like that small line had transformed everything. He noted with admiration that the guests were well versed in magic despite her modesty. To the boy, she seemed surprisingly skilled and kind. Ariel, feeling awkward, admitted she was simply curious about this new magical construct. She didn't want to attract too much attention. She suggested that the boy keep it a secret while she got used to the palace in order to avoid unnecessary talk. The boy didn't understand why this was important, but Ariel explained that if anyone asked, he could say that he discovered it himself by accident. She hinted that revealing secrets could end badly, and the boy realized she was serious. He assured her he wouldn't tell anyone. The child promised to keep everything a secret, understanding that the guest was counting on his restraint. They said goodbye, and Ariel felt relieved, confident that the boy would keep his word. She was amazed at how magic had been integrated into everyday life. Rachel approached her, and seeing the result, commented on Ariel's skill. Rachel's expression showed genuine surprise, which made Ariel feel uneasy. She didn't want to stand out. Remembering Rachel had been there the whole time, Ariel knew she needed to be persuaded to remain silent too. It felt like Rachel had vanished into thin air while she was so carried away. They were profoundly shocked to learn that the boy possessed an advanced robe. For wizards of his caliber, this was something incredible and practically unattainable. No one understood how just one line in a magic circle could produce such a powerful effect. The new line that appeared in the circle caused them genuine confusion. They knew exactly what this magical trait was, but they couldn't explain how it could have ended up in the child's robe. It was clearly beyond their comprehension. When asked about the origin of this trait, the boy honestly replied that he himself didn't know. Then the wizards began to speculate. Perhaps it was just an incredible coincidence. Some even suggested that the line appeared literally out of nowhere. However, this was a misguided thought, as everything indicated the child was a true genius. His abilities could rival those of legendary figures like the Emperor. When asked how he did it, the boy replied that he couldn't explain it clearly. Simple wizards couldn't understand the complex nature of his magic, as it was born intuitively within him. The wizards began to believe they were dealing with a true genius. The boy recalled how his mistress had once advised him to keep such abilities a secret, which made him think about his future. Having realized the situation, the boy realized he had made a mistake. He felt an internal conflict. Should he reveal his powers or keep them secret? The decision seemed extremely difficult. The emperor, hearing of the commotion in the mage's tower, wanted to find out what had happened. He expressed surprise that even minor changes to the magic circles could cause such a storm of emotions. Ariel, the center of all this commotion, replied that she had merely made a slight adjustment to the magic circle. She hadn't expected such a simple action to have such serious consequences. When the emperor asked her what she was looking at, Ariel showed him a book of illustrations. For her, it was just a pastime, but in a world with a different magical tradition, her actions had a profound impact. Ariel considered her changes minor, but the level of magic in this world was vastly different from what she was used to. It was obvious to her, but unbelievable to those around her. She explained that magic had once completely disappeared from this world. For her, who had known magic from the other side, this was a shocking discovery. For a long time, Ariel couldn't understand how this could have happened. 1,000 years ago, at the height of the Great War, magic vanished along with the fall of great kingdoms. The world faced a catastrophe that brought civilization to the brink of total annihilation. The war destroyed 3 powerful countries, almost completely wiping out their populations. Only one small alliance managed to escape this fate, secluding itself in the south. It became the last hope for the survivors. The Southern Alliance united representatives of various races who contributed to the world's rebirth. Their cooperation ushered in an era of rebirth, laying the foundations for a new development. Using their combined knowledge, the Union began to develop science, which gradually made life more comfortable. However, over time, scientific development reached a dead end and progress stalled. Then a discovery occurred that changed the course of history. A magic circle based on ancient magic transformed mana into energy, giving new impetus to technological development. This discovery was a true miracle. Machines capable of operating on even a small amount of mana revolutionized the world. Technology began to change, and magic became an integral part of the world. Magic had once again regained its dominant position. If Ariel had admitted that she was Ashildr, she would have been immediately proclaimed the goddess of magic, but she preferred to live in peace and quiet. The emperor, upon learning of her identity, made a firm decision not to share her with anyone. Despite the revival of magic, its level in this world remained far from perfect. One magic circle changed everything. It is ancient magic that collected the novel and transformed it into energy. It was a miracle that the machine started moving, even with a small amount of mana. And this discovery changed many things, altering the level of technology. Soon magic began to rule, period. And if she tells everyone that she is Ashildr, then overnight she will become a god for the wizards of the empire. But the girl still preferred to live in peace and quiet, so she refused. The emperor remarked that he too didn't want to share it with anyone. This meant that magic was gone. Although it was late, they managed to revive it. But of course, the level of development was far from ideal. It was a bit curious why the wizards were calmly wandering around the palace coming out. But its territory was a tower for them. Although they were a little strange, they still knew how to cast spells. It turns out that the palace actively supports wizards, and that child also ended up there for this reason. He was very cute, and she didn't understand why he was so handsome and looked like a puppy. Of course, he wasn't as good as Seti was as a child, but still. Seti was an incredibly sweet child. She still remembers how he would chirp her name with his bright blue eyes wide open. That little one has grown up a lot, and now he is an emperor. But there are still some things left from those times. For example, his beautiful eye color. Lips saying her name, though his voice was rougher now. Now he is approaching her, and that is why she is very embarrassed. She asked him to stop and asked what he was doing. Ariel screamed, asking why he had suddenly pursed his lips. He assumed she was staring at her because she wanted a kiss. Ariel started denying it and said she was just looking at the face. She turned away and said that everything was not like that at all because she was very embarrassed. Plus, he wants to steal her first kiss without warning. The emperor couldn't believe it was her first kiss. She said it was true, but the emperor said that this was not so, because he had already kissed her when we had it during their first meeting. She closed my eyes. They say that a sleeping princess will wake up if the prince kisses her, but she just continued to sleep in a sweet dream. I couldn't believe that back then when he was so little, he did this. Although that's not even the point, she will be arrested because of him. He involved her pure soul in this crime. That would be the end of their conversation for today. So he wished her a good night. But the girl started screaming at him to get out of here. When he came out, he realized that she still hadn't found out that the kiss was on the forehead. Because at that time, his mother kissed him goodnight, only like that, and he liked the idea that she had never kissed him before. Ansel turned to His Highness and reported that the priest urgently demanded an audience. The emperor was surprised that he wanted to see him so late at night. The temple, which had been silent all this time, began to move. This is not a good sign at all. But he agreed to this audience. The priest turned to His Highness and noted that a disease was spreading among the people. The emperor was surprised and asked again, and the priest began to say that its symptoms were that the entire human body was rapidly drying out. This is exactly how ancient occultists sacrificed people. The priest confirmed this and said that this was a sign that a witch had appeared. He also heard that she lives in the eastern monster forest. He turned to His Highness and noted that His Highness had brought someone from there a few days ago. The priest was pleased with himself for having said this. The emperor stood up and said that his story was very interesting since he was talking about Ariel. He grabbed his sword and said it was a bold statement. He came closer and closer to the priest and said that his bold expression was for those who do not understand anything. Cedric asked him how he dared to unfairly accuse the future empress. He cut his face, so the man immediately began to ask him not to do it and begged for mercy. Cedric asked who had sent it. He assumed it was Felix or Violet. The priest pretended that he did not understand at all what the gentleman was talking about. The emperor was sure that it was the elder brother imprisoned in the temple, or Saint Violet. Cedric thought it was one of them, but meanwhile, the man was simply begging for forgiveness. The emperor ordered Ellen Lindbergh to find out what was really behind this. The priest did not understand at all where they were dragging him. He asked to be saved. The emperor was shocked that they dared to drag Ariel here. It seems it's time to restore order to the temple, and it's best to do so without delay. Many people were talking about the fact that the guest, His Majesty, is a witch. No one can believe that people on the emperor fell in love with that girl. That's why such a rumor started. The maid said that this information came from the temple. The other girl was surprised and realized that in that case, it could be true. After this, the lady approached them and ordered them to repeat whether His Majesty had indeed brought a candidate for empress. This is Rosemary Raymond, the youngest daughter of Duke Raymond, one of the leading candidates for the post of empress. The maids said they were saying she was a witch, but the girl started saying that, in any case, this girl was a new candidate brought in personally by the emperor. But they started saying that this information was inaccurate and that she was completely illiterate and couldn't even read. She came out of nowhere, so she couldn't become empress. And the man the emperor brought in, if such rumors were to spread, His Majesty would not be able to simply sit still, a person unshaken by gossip. Or maybe it's this girl who has no retort, so she's unable to stop the rumors. It would be funny if the emperor really does have such bad taste. The girl ordered me to request an audience because she was leaving for the palace immediately. If she didn't like her, she would have to be disposed of. The maids were wondering if they could stay there, but another maid thought they should come closer. But when this tree opened its eyes and smiled at them, they became very scared. Ariel shouted at him not to torment the maids and came towards her. Her legs are very tired, so she can't read anymore. The lady noted that next time she should bring a chair and a table for convenience. This garden is definitely suitable for quiet reading, because no one comes here for fear of monsters. Well, then the emperor approached her because he had finally found her. He assumed she'd come here to hide from people Ariel couldn't see where else in the palaces she could go. Besides this place, only the library. She can't even read the signs because of the letter's purpose, so she looks at picture books here, and it would be nice if the maid could be her personal guide. Rachel was too taciturn. Ariel felt like she was about to get a hole punched in her eye. Ariel also asked why he had come at all. He actually wanted to say something. Rosemary from the duchy requested a meeting, but the lady doesn't even know who she is. The emperor noted that this was one of the candidates for the post of empress, but they called themselves that. Ariel was immediately delighted because it turns out there are already candidates, and she said that this is very good. She told him to choose wisely, so he immediately asked what she just said. There is no reason to refuse. It is better for her to meet her and build a friendly relationship. Ariel was shocked that she'd requested a meeting with her, and not him. The Emperor looked at my book and was shocked that she was still at the level of reading picture books. At the upcoming banquet, he would announce her to his empress. Before that, it would be a good idea for her to make friends with aristocrats, so he gave permission. She believed that she showed up at the palace out of anger because she was a candidate empress, and he was offering her to deal with the green one there who was burning with rivalry towards her. She's already 1,000 years old, and it's hard to stand up to the younger generation. Not that many. The Emperor said everything was fine, and she would definitely like her. All of this stems from her nickname, the Duchy's Devil. Ariel wasn't quite sure what that meant, or why she should like it at all. She was shocked that he managed to notice that she liked a beauty with a bad character. After this, Rosemary greeted the palace guest. Whether she should address her as His Majesty's dear guest remains unclear. Ariel smiled and remarked that she could call her whatever her interlocutor wished. It sounded so easy and casual that the girl was surprised by her composure. The maid looked her over from head to toe and added with a hint of malice that her visit was most likely aimed at finding her mistress's shortcomings. The room seemed a bit cramped to the girl, though she had expected something quite different. She imagined that the person the emperor had decided to make empress would be surrounded by luxury. She thought that if this cramped room symbolized the emperor's love, then her expectations were clearly not met, and this made her feel a little sad. Ariel was surprised by her remark, considering that the room was quite cozy and not at all small as the guest claimed. The girl couldn't understand why the furniture seemed so simple and modest. Ariel explained that she had heard that the emperor had deliberately chosen an old-fashioned style for this room. The maid's gaze lingered again on the furniture, which she considered substandard. She even doubted whether they were paying for such things. They looked as if they had simply been taken from the nearest store. The setting looked so ordinary that the girl assumed that the lady's clothes could also have been chosen hastily and temporarily. Ariel, without embarrassment, clarified that these were indeed temporary clothes, but that tailors would soon make something more suitable for her. The guest continued to speak with interest, as if she had heard that the lady was even illiterate, which sounded more funny to her than critical. Ariel calmly confirmed that there was some truth to this, but added that she was now learning to write. The girl wondered what the emperor's motives were in choosing such a person. She couldn't understand how His Majesty could fall in love at first sight with a woman who, moreover, wasn't even particularly beautiful. Ariel, sharing her surprise, merely shrugged. The guest noted that her direct words, for some reason, did not offend the lady, who reacted to everything with enviable calm, as if nothing was happening. Her gaze seemed especially incomprehensible, calm and warm, as if a grandmother were looking at her little granddaughter, and not at an impudent visitor. The girl decided that it was better not to argue with Ariel now, but to prepare better next time in order to still gain the upper hand in their communication. Once everything had been examined, the girl declared herself quite satisfied with what she saw, and quickly took her leave. Ariel was slightly surprised by her sudden departure. As she left, the guest clarified that her visit was over, and that the tea had been very tasty, although the cup remained untouched. Ariel noticed that the girl didn't even try the drink, but she just threw the handkerchief on the table, adding that they would meet again. The maid quickly picked up the handkerchief, but was ordered to throw it away, which caused her no small amount of surprise. Rosemary explained that the handkerchief was dirty and therefore belonged in the trash can, and then turned around with confidence. By ordering the maid to follow her, she made it clear that their visit was over. "She's got some guts," Ariel thought, watching her determined actions. It was clearly written on her face. The maid, observing all this, silently agreed with Ariel. The rumors about this lady's difficult nature were clearly true and needed no further proof. However, despite her complex personality, she remained incredibly attractive. The mistress suddenly declared that she was still a sweetheart, leaving the maids completely perplexed. Rosemary added that the girl reminded her of a puppy, cute, but with a difficult temperament. Her words were laced with a strange tenderness that softened the severity of her tone. That's why Cedric assumed Rosemary would like her. After all, if someone could tame this wayward girl, everything might have turned out differently. Rosemary smiled and remarked that she would definitely see her again. Her barking sharp remarks were so amusing that they lifted her spirits. It was hard not to notice that Rosemary was clearly attracted to unusual personalities. The maids, however, had noticeably tired and puzzled expressions. The maids decided that such behavior was entirely in keeping with their mistress's nature. Her interests were strange, but perhaps that was precisely what made her so appealing. Meanwhile, the weather was gorgeous, and Ariel decided to return the books she'd read and get some new ones. She was considering finding something easy to read, with pictures or simple words. However, her plans changed slightly when she was approached by a young wizard who, instead of inviting her to his place, patiently waited for a meeting right there. He said with genuine joy that he had hoped to see her again. His face glowed with happiness, and Ariel was a little taken aback by his sincerity. When Ariel heard he was waiting for her, she was surprised. Then the boy explained that, thanks to her help with the robe, he was officially recognized as a wizard. He explained that this happened because his work was mistaken for the result of his magical efforts. Although he looked slightly embarrassed, he was genuinely sorry that this had happened. Ariel gently replied that there was no need to apologize. She herself preferred not to mention it, so his guilt was minimal. The boy respectfully asked how he could repay her for such generous help. His eyes showed his seriousness, but Ariel just smiled and said that the best thank you would be if he just kept it a secret. Suddenly, the boy noticed she was holding a picture book. She explained that this was her way of teaching writing, which greatly interested the boy. Then, he offered to help her learn her letters. His offer was so sincere that Ariel felt embarrassed and confused. Ariel, a little surprised, asked again, reminding him that the emperor had ordered him not to interfere with her education. However, the boy was unfazed. He calmly remarked that he hadn't personally received such an order, so it probably wouldn't be a violation. She was nonetheless curious about his name. He gave his full name Julian Ray, but suggested they call him simply Julian Ariel. With a slight smile, said she trusted him. She found his kind and gentle nature charming. His puppy-like hair reminded her of Cedric as a child. Cedric had been very cute as a child too, which brought a slight smile to her face. She decided it was best not to pursue the subject further. The maids exchanged silent glances upon hearing her words. They understood that their mistress saw things differently, but it was best not to discuss it out loud. Her glances could unsettle anyone. During their training, Julian noticed how quickly Ariel grasped new things. Her ability to learn the alphabet in such a short time struck him as astonishing. He couldn't resist praising her, saying she was amazing. Her progress amazed even him, as she began reading easy texts almost immediately. Ariel listened with pleasure to the praise, and immediately asked if he had any books about magic. She had long dreamed of reading something like that to learn more about the magical world. The boy explained that such books existed, but they were kept in a tower, where outsiders were strictly forbidden from entering. Ariel paused, understanding the complexity of the situation. She figured mages were truly introverted to guard their secrets so carefully. So she asked if there were any books about ancient lands like Arundel's. Julian perked up and said there was a shop in town where you could find artifacts and books from the ancient world. It was a place renowned among aristocrats. Ariel was shocked to hear that such unique items were being sold openly. Her interest in the place only increased. Julian said that one can find there not only books and manuscripts, but also furniture dishes and other items that are antiques or imitations. This place was truly popular among aristocrats, and almost everyone knew about it. Julian added that this place is especially interesting for those who love antiquities. Ariel asked where the shop was, assuming it was somewhere far away. However, Julian said it was nearby. You could walk out of the palace and straight to the street you needed. Ariel suggested going there right now. Julian, a little taken aback, reminded her that she might not be allowed to leave the palace. She dismissed his words, claiming it was just a short stroll nearby. The maids standing nearby were stunned by her frivolity. The maids hastened to pass this information on to their superiors, hoping to prevent any potential trouble. At the same time, they tried to persuade their mistress to return. However, Ansel caught up with them along the way, hurrying to tell them that His Highness was currently at a meeting. This clearly upset Ariel. She sighed in disappointment, noting that it would have been nice to go with him, but she quickly decided there was no point in delaying and would go on her own. Ansel, however, tried to stop her, reminding her that she couldn't go out alone. Ariel slightly mockingly asked if she really needed anyone's permission to go for a walk now. Ansel explained that this was not entirely true, but added that if His Majesty found out about this, the situation could change significantly. Ariel merely chuckled and said that in that case, the Emperor should wait. Her voice carried the conviction that she was doing the right thing. She told him to tell the Emperor that if he was obedient, she would bring him a gift. At the same time, she asked if she could send the bills to the palace for payment. Ansel, realizing that it was impossible to convince her, ordered the knights to follow the lady to ensure her safety. Indeed, Ariel proved to be a problematic person. Ansel had heard that there had been an increase in the number of noblewomen being kidnapped on the streets recently, and he was concerned about her safety. The store was filled with a multitude of Arundel items. Every shelf and display case evoked a bygone era, when refinement and luxury reigned supreme. The man who was following the lady was sure that she was looking for something specific, something that could stand out from other things and have special value. The lady specified that she needed a book on magic, hinting that her interests went far beyond the mundane. This slightly surprised the salesman, but he didn't ask any further questions. She recalled Rosemary's words, once remarking that her furniture was too simple. This offended the lady, and now she was considering radical changes to the interior. So she announced that she would start by replacing the furniture. Even if it were imitations, it was important to create an atmosphere that reflected the Arundel era and style despite its age. She added that the Arundel era ended more than 1,000 years ago, but its style still seems incredibly modern and elegant, worthy of repetition. Suddenly, the lady heard a familiar voice asking what had brought her to this place. It sounded friendly, but a little mocking. Rosemary stood before her and noted that her comments about the furniture seemed to have stung. However, she praised the store's selection, emphasizing that Arundel furniture was truly luxurious. Ariel smiled and guessed that Rosemary had come looking for furniture too. She found the idea curious, but slightly comical, given her friend's style. Rosemary said she could handle it herself. In her opinion, good taste was key, not just choosing expensive items. She sincerely doubted Ariel could handle it. Taste, she added, is formed from a young age, and is not something that can be acquired or developed quickly. Ariel listened understandingly, agreeing with some of her comments. The lady extended her hand to Rosemary, but she immediately pulled it away, considering it mockery. Her reaction was amusing, and Ariel couldn't hide her joy. Ariel genuinely found Rosemary endearing. Her reaction, full of emotion and a touch of childish resentment, only added to her charm. Ariel's attention was drawn to an old box. Inside was a counterfeit relic of the lowest quality. However, something about the object intrigued her. The salespeople apologized for having such an item on display and offered to remove it. But the lady asked them to stop as she wanted to examine the relic closer. Her premonition was confirmed. Before her was indeed an interesting object. She understood that its value lay hidden behind its apparent simplicity. At that moment, Rosemary walked over, noticing that Ariel had once again chosen something that looked like the worst possible option. She added that such a thing was as if made for Ariel, because an old and cheap thing is more a symbol of poverty than of refined taste. Ariel considered her words, but decided to find out the item's value. Perhaps its hidden value would justify her interest. The sellers explained that the item is not for sale. Its age makes appraisal difficult, so there is no exact price. However, Ariel was certain that sooner or later, they would change their minds once they learned the relic's true value. She decided to obtain proof of purchase. The seller, seeing her persistence, agreed to clarify the price, although he himself seemed not to understand why she needed it so much. Rosemary was stunned. Spending money on such an old item seemed absurd to her. She believed Ariel's taste clearly left much to be desired. Despite the criticism, Rosemary couldn't help but admit that she herself had a weakness for such things. She could only accept it. Ariel turned to Julian, asking if he felt anything unusual about the hairpin. His opinion could shed light on a lot. The boy replied that it was just an old hairpin, and that he didn't see anything special about it. Perhaps its magical properties were still unknown to the world. Ariel decided to test her hunch. She asked Julian to imbue the hairpin with magic, to see if it could reveal its secrets. She gently guided his hand, helping him draw the magic circle. Ariel sensed it could work and expected results. When the magic circle was complete, the hairpin began to glow, confirming that her guess was correct. Julian noted that the glow was not pleasing to the eye, and Rosemary stood there, confused, not understanding how this had happened. Ariel mockingly asked Rosemary if she liked it, hinting that she might benefit from studying antiques more deeply than Ariel herself. Rosemary became angry and decided to leave. Her irritation was noticeable, and she clearly had no intention of continuing the conversation. Ariel just smiled, thinking again that Rosemary looked even cuter when she was angry than usual. As Ariel left, she heard a noise from the street. Something was clearly happening, and it caught her attention. She looked out and saw several men leading Rosemary away. She was resisting and screaming loudly, demanding to be let go. The men didn't hold her too tightly, but her screams attracted attention. She clearly felt unsafe. Ariel was outraged, saying that the men had decided to kidnap her dog right in front of her, which was brazen and unacceptable. Princess Serenial's headpiece, a magical item, created by Arendelle Technology for the heirs to the throne. This hairpin is not only jewelry, but also a weapon. The man's leg doesn't move at all, so they started shouting and asking who she is. The knights who had followed Ariel out of the palace wasted no time in quickly intervening to take control of the situation and prevent the conflict from escalating further. One of the men who had decided to attack the girl suddenly swung at Ariel, but she deftly dodged the blow, demonstrating excellent reflexes. Without wasting a second, Ariel clenched her fist and delivered a powerful, precise punch straight into the attacker's face, instantly putting him at a disadvantage. Her powerful blow literally sent the man flying backwards, which left Rosemary in a state of shock, while the knights, watching what was happening, still could not understand what exactly was happening. The stunned men, still unable to understand who this unusual girl was, quickly decided to flee, trying to disappear from sight as quickly as possible. Ariel shouted loudly to the knights that the enemies were escaping, and they immediately rushed in pursuit, intending to catch up and detain them. One of the men was pleased that the girl had left him alone, and he was able to hide in a secluded place where he thought no one would be able to find him. However, to his surprise, the emperor was already standing right in front of him, whose servants immediately seized the fugitive, not giving him a chance to escape. The prisoner was immediately thrown to the floor. When he came to and tried to comprehend what had happened, his consciousness was still hazy. When he finally managed to see clearly what was happening, he realized with horror that the emperor himself was standing before him, instilling fear with his very presence. The emperor, looking at the fallen enemy, coldly remarked that, as expected, the rat had finally fallen into the trap. Ariel berthed so that everyone would get out of the way because everything was running away. It was the criminal who wanted to kidnap the lady. She didn't understand why they weren't catching him, or why the knights in general weren't catching him, that the safety of the honored guest was more important to them. First of all, she has to be here because other places are dangerous. They will deal with a dangerous criminal. Rosemary came to ask why the mistress was such a good fighter. Ariel wasn't quite sure what to say. Her powers improved during close combat in the war, but she was constantly fighting with her brother. She grew up with him, and they fought all the time, so she was used to it. Rosemary was surprised by her skills and began to believe that she had captured His Highness's power, and she was sure that this was exactly how it happened. She thought it was simply incredible, but the lady said it couldn't be. But the redhead said there were ancient, long-extinct bull rituals where girls hunt boys, catch them, and make them their husbands. Ariel told her not to change the subject, and it looked like she wanted to tell her something. Rosemary said that she didn't want to at all, and so they would see each other later. The girl was shocked that it was so difficult for her to thank her, but she was already ready to wait for them at the next meeting. It was time for her to go to the palace. But suddenly, she met the emperor. She was surprised when she saw him. He was also dragging this bastard with him. She was surprised and asked who it was. She also noticed that this man looked very similar to the kidnapper she had recently escaped. The emperor asked if this scum had really done it, and remarked that it was his trophy. It was her gift, he caught it for her. Ariel said she didn't need such gifts, and couldn't believe that he actually caught it himself. His face is pretty like the face of a cat that has caught a mouse, and is also bringing useless gifts. The emperor noted that he already had enough trophies, and there was no need to leave him alive. Ariel asked what he was going to do with it. For some reason, the atmosphere became very serious. She turned to the emperor and said that it was very good, that if there was useful evidence, each person could be interrogated separately, so he should be left alive. The emperor said, "Let him live." The men began to say that she was handling his greatness very well, but the reaction of the honored guest was not that of an ordinary person. Since they are here, they can go shopping together. After all, she is here before to buy something for herself. The men started talking about what to do with this man, and the commander said that as always he should get rid of them. Rosemary was almost kidnapped by fanatical sectarians, and this was reported to the saint. It's a pity, since that's the case. If everything had worked out, we could have gotten rid of her forever. Lately, she has been hearing more and more about sectarians, a murder in the capital. It was a sacrifice. They say that aristocrats with good blood are of great value. Among the rumors were talks about a girl whom the emperor brought. They say she is a witch of the sectarians, and it seems that the emperor fell for the witch's spell. The girl believed that it was her mother who caused these rumors to spread. She was wondering what she was going to do, but her mother said that for now it was better for her to remain ignorant. She must, while she organizes a wonderful stage for her and erases everyone who is aiming for the place of the empress, which I and her daughter must take. Ariel was in the garden, where Rosemary's tea party would be held, but she didn't understand why they weren't at the Duke's estate, but in the palace garden. The emperor noted that today she went alone, but next time it was impossible. She had to be in the palace, or he would go with her.